Let's go, baby. Ooh. Huh? Huh? What's up? Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning to my one faithful viewer on Rumble. I don't know who you are, but I love you so much. I love you so much. You're always here. I don't even know who you are, but you're always here. I can't tell you how awesome that is, bud. Really. So I apologize for being a little late. I woke up a little bit late. I didn't sleep worth a damn. I didn't sleep at all. I didn't go to bed till 2. Then I tried to wake up at 6. My days are getting scrambled, man. I have not slept well. If I'm being totally honest, I haven't slept well in months. Alright, looks like Bitcoin's starting to move on up a little bit. Ethereum, of course, will be following. Let's take a look at the Earl. Let's take a look at the Earl. Coming down. Look at that. 5 o'clock this morning. What happened? I wonder what happened. Well, today is Friday. We're going to find out what's going on with the war. Well, you probably won't hear very much about us. Well, it was a bad choice of words there. You're probably not. We're probably not going to get much of a catalyst today. It's Friday, and Trump gave the Iranian maniacs 15 days. So I think that's going to be what we're waiting on for anything to happen. I really honestly I hope Trump says screw it, and then Iran needs to go. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Iran needs to go. Not the people. The Islamic Republic. They need to go. Very badly so. Let's see what the talking heads are saying.
Here, right?
No, just so you know, I woke up and I went and got coffee, and I haven't even had a smoke yet. I'm very committed to being on time. I hate being late.
A full normalization, of course, you maybe could get something, in the $60 to $80 a barrel. We might be living more in this partial reopening scenario, $80 to $100 a barrel. And of course, if the whole thing breaks down, and we thought it broke down sustainably, then
we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting
go
there.
to $120, $150 a barrel.
I've got this rattling. Shut up. Right. Headphones. Let's see.
Back, even if it is suboptimal relative to the conditions you had coming into the conflict.
Why do you think, though, there is this consensus that the Iranians really are ready to open the strait and have it be normal? Because this is their only piece of leverage with Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a consensus that everyone's ready for it to be normal. I mean,
well, look at the price of oil, and it looks kind of...
Yeah, well, I think that's where price matters quite a bit, right? So normal...
We'll go over to Asia news. Oh, no, that's not right. Clicked the wrong one, baby.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has intensified diplomatic engagement on the Middle East situation. He held a series of calls with leaders from Lebanon, France, Bahrain and Austria amid ongoing regional tensions and efforts to sustain the U.S.-Iran ceasefire.
In a conversation with Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, Shehbaz Sharif condemned ongoing Israeli attacks on Lebanon and expressed condolences over the loss of lives during recent hostilities. According to Pakistan's Prime Minister office, Nawaf Salam requested Pakistan's support in efforts to bring an immediate end to the attacks targeting Lebanon and its people. Prime Minister Sharif said Pakistan remains engaged in efforts for regional peace and stability, noting that upcoming talks between the United States and Iran in Islamabad are part of these efforts. In a separate call, French President Emmanuel Macron congratulated Prime Minister Sharif on Pakistan's role in facilitating the U.S.-Iran ceasefire and expressed support for the upcoming peace talks in Islamabad. Both leaders also discussed the situation in Lebanon and stressed the need to end violence and restore stability. Bahrain's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa also appreciated Pakistan's efforts in helping secure the ceasefire. Prime Minister Sharif conveyed condolences over recent losses, and both sides agreed to continue coordination for regional peace and stability. In another call, Austrian Chancellor Christian Stocker endorsed Pakistan's role in facilitating the ceasefire and supporting the resumption of negotiations between Washington and Tehran. Both leaders emphasized the importance of full adherence to the ceasefire to strengthen prospects for successful talks and lasting peace.
This is Asia One. Let's take a break.
More commercial, more commercial.
It's a rare occasion when everyone on the street is so logical, John, especially in New York City. Normally we get some interesting folks, but here I really can't disagree with anything that was said from those when asked about their religion and why now more than ever. It's especially great to see the next generation. I think Gen Z has really gotten it right in terms of traditional values, more so than us millennials. I think the millennials lost their way, but Gen Z, I think, is bringing it back to faith, back to what truly matters. And they're even turning their back on social media. I think they're less engaged than previous people like the Gen Z, the millennials rather, and the boomers. So good for you, Gen Z. Lead the way.
Yeah, but I think all age groups are actually coming to the realization that there's a lot of emptiness out here.
That's why.
You know, in terms of all these things that people are trying to find peace, satisfaction, and joy, and they realize, you know what? It's all vanity.
True.
And they're beginning to actually tap into something, in this case, the word, to actually fill that void. And it's good that Gen Z is leading, but also millennials and everyone else down the line are coming to that same realization. And I think we're going to see more and more people actually start reading the Bible, asking questions. And there's a lot of content on social media about faith.
Yeah.
It's not just all that other garbage. People
I'm sorry. I don't care. Get this garbage that you're talking out of the news. I wonder if somebody's going to speak today.
And what a thrill to have watched you take off from Kennedy Space Center. It truly unified America. I have a question from one of our local voters here in Indian River County. Her name is Renee, and she said, what were you thinking when you were going around the moon?
I am looking for more news, but I spend most of my time looking
for another source. So I think in the aggregate, the numbers that we're talking about spread out over a 10-year basis are not all that meaningful. But, I mean, certainly we don't seem to have a set of policies, or we're not on a policy trajectory that's specifically aimed at fiscal sustainability or changing deficit to GDP in a meaningful way. Perhaps it is sort of leveraging the idea that we're going to have better growth in the future, maybe driven by productivity, driven by AI, but not this sort of proactive approach by Congress to address it.
Michael, thank you so much
Thanks
for
so much.
your important work this morning. Michael Zezas of Morgan Stanley, especially as we think about the scenarios that could come out of this weekend with these talks happening in Pakistan tomorrow. Cover the program, David Tinsley of Bank of America Institute on the sharp jump in consumer spending. Plus, Christina Aquino is back with us this morning. Service now falling after a downgrade from UBS. The stock is down more than 1%. More on that story next. You're watching Bloomberg Surveillance.
Since when is the stock moving 1% news? Right, looks like silver is on a kind of a little bit of a climb. I wouldn't really jump over. I wouldn't really celebrate this. Wow, look at that candle for gold. Look at that. 5 o'clock this morning. That's another one right at 5 o'clock. What the hell happened at 5 o'clock? And see, whenever anything in a trading view, the account of oh God, what am I trying to say here? When they update news and stuff, like over here, this says 1 minute ago, 2 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago, you know, that's fine. That's not actually what I was talking about. So it's not TradingView that does what I'm about to tell you. But if you look at like YouTube and their view count in on videos, and this applies to a lot of Google owned assets that have anything to do with, like, you know, media or entertainment or even news. The times that it says they were released on, like, if I were to pull up one of my little shorts that I make and look at the analytics, it'll tell you how long ago that video was posted. But it only like let's say it says 2 hours ago, right? That doesn't go into minutes. It doesn't break it down any more than that. But if it says 2 hours ago, it'll stay saying 2 hours ago all the way up until it's 2 hours and 59 minutes ago. As soon as it breaks the 3 hour mark, then it'll say 3 hours ago. Yeah, you'd think I had a point to that, and my head is a little swimmy, man. I didn't sleep well. I took some, like, you know, Benadryl to help me sleep, and it's hard to shake it off and get back to work. But yeah, that time thing used to screw me up pretty good. Ooh. Microphone being stupid. Yeah, that time thing I was talking about, it used to screw me up. It doesn't anymore though. But I was just bringing it up to pass it along that, you know, sometimes when you see a story and it says 2 hours ago, it was actually, like, you know, it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours ago. And the reason I was saying that was because I'm waiting. I was trying to see what kind of news there is. So around 5 o'clock, currently it is 7:30. So 2.5 hours ago, 2.3 hours ago is when this news would have came out. So I would be looking for anything that says 2 hours ago, because it's not quite in the 3 mark, you know what I'm saying? So the reason I bring that up is so that when you're looking for information and news, keep that in mind. On time-sensitive stuff, obviously. And I'm not really seeing much Ding dong diddly doo ding. Really? 10 minutes, 2 hours ago. There. Shares gain before U.S.-Iran talks, oil edges higher. That's the only Brent news that there is. Huh. That's nano. Looks like the dollar's taking a beating. Just a little. It's not really that big of a deal. This thing fluctuates all the time anyway. I've got Megadeth stuck in my head. Hangar 18. Possibly I've seen too much. Hangar 18, I know too much. Ceasefire sends dollar on a weekly drop. U.S.-Iran talks in focus. Shares gain before U.S.-Iran talks. Oil edges higher. Potential jump in the U.S. inflation could support the dollar. I love how they word these things. Some of these stories are worded only for, like, you know, people that are in the know to even pick up on. The average person will read stuff like this and go, huh? Because I'll admit, there's sometimes I read some of this crap and I'm like, huh? China's yuan steady, but set for the biggest weekly rise in 15 months. Dollar set for sharp weekly decline. Equities turn around on renewed Middle East hopes. Dollar falls in hopes of de-escalation. Dollar struggles to rebound as fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire keeps markets wary. Israel's Netanyahu, no ceasefire in Lebanon 17 hours ago. Want to reach more peace pacts. Yeah, you know, the way they frame this makes Israel look like they're just out for blood. And to a degree they are, but, you know, they don't want to mention why Israel's doing so. It's because Hezbollah is there. That's who they aim to kill. Oh, but the children that have died, yes, that's awful. It's terrible. However, these animals, Hezbollah, put their weapons in schools and in hospitals and in everyday neighborhoods, and then they fire on Israel from those locations. So specifically so that when Israel responds, defends itself, they can turn around and be like, look, they're bombing schools and killing kids. Well, you know what? Maybe if Hamas wasn't there doing what they're doing, maybe that wouldn't have happened. You know, I'm not trying to make light of the people that died. It is surely and definitely awful. But the media leaves out these essential parts of the story. I'm not saying it's any better or any worse. I'm not saying, you know, that it's not awful. Yes, of course, it's terrible if anybody dies. But, you know, it's not like Israel's attacking everybody just for shits and giggles like Iran. Iran's killing people over prophecy. Israel has, by and large, only ever defended itself. And I'm sorry. I just want to apologize for that. And anybody else who thinks, who wants to, you know, throw their opinion at it, you got to know the history of things, man. For 1,000 years, these morons have been after Israel because of prophecy. It's so ridiculous. But no, the media doesn't want to cover that. They just want to point and say, look at all the horrible shit Israel's doing. Yeah. Why though? Why? Why are they doing it? They don't ever say anything about why. Because, you know, if they said why, if they told everybody why they're doing it, well, then public opinion might shift, and we can't have that.
It's really interesting. I think really important. Two things that struck out to me immediately. First off, Besson and Powell are having a meeting, and they're somewhat getting along, even though we see the president jawbone Powell all the time. And two, how dangerous and concerned are they about this AI that all the bank CEOs were summoned to Washington.
And it's not just them concerned. Anthropic itself is concerned. This is the first LLM that they're not rolling out to the broader public, that they're being selective because they basically saw this thing is so powerful, it can exploit all types of cyber vulnerabilities. This was from the New York Times article about this. I thought it was really interesting. So during safety tests for Mythos, an Anthropic research got an email from Mythos itself while he was eating a sandwich in the park. It was a surprise because the model wasn't supposed to be online. It had broken out of its test environment and then went on to brag about breaking the rules and attempted to cover its tracks.
Nice.
We're getting closer to this land of agentic AI, and it's kind of like, cool, so we'll boost productivity by 10%, but maybe like bring a complete downfall to human civilization.
Right, so robots just
could bring
completely
down the
taking
downfall
over.
of human civilization. She's like, oh, it broke out of it. It's holding, and oh, but it was so cute.
The crosshairs right now when it comes to a number of departments down in
What
Washington.
a time to be alive,
kind of
right?
feels
What do you
like,
think?
I know it's not necessarily marketing for
What do you
them,
think
but
about
kind of good
AI and where it's
marketing.
going?
We're on
I mean,
the verge for an open AI IPO, and the two are really warring against each other. I don't know, when I read this story about Anthropic having such good of an LLM that they don't want to release it to the public, I'm like, hey, Anthropic seems ahead in this race.
What also scares me that if this is where Anthropic is, I wonder at this point, where's China when it comes to all of this? All right, investors are waiting fresh inflation data due out in just under an hour. According to the Bank of America Institute March Consumer Checkpoint Survey, consumer spending picked up sharply in March, even beyond gasoline. David Tinsley of Bank of America Institute joins us now. David, thank you so much for joining us. I love the research. Give us a sense of where consumers are spending.
And your mom.
Well, I think, the big story in the data today, in the report today,
yeah,
is
I'm not spending anything. But, yeah, the whole AI thing, man, it blows my mind. The stuff that we're pulling off now, like, it seems like every month there's something new about AI or there's some incredible advancement. It's moving fast. We all know this, but I can still stand in awe of it because, I mean, wow. You can't help but wonder what's next, What's next for human civilization? And I mean to take a protracted view, way out, say another, well, I think I made it sound more way than I should. Where are we going to be in another 1,000 years, Oh, man. Where are we going to be? Another 1,000 years. It's inconceivable. Because, I mean, think about it. When if you were alive in the year 1026, there's no way in hell you could have imagined where we are now. There's just no way you could have. But whatever you may know about the year 1026, wow, I mean, yeah. Sorry, man. I'm literally half asleep here. I imagine I might say some stuff that doesn't make sense because I tend to do that when I get really tired.
relatively satisfactory for some period of time. Obviously, lots of uncertainty around where that goes. Lower income, their wage growth just 1%. We did notice in our report their discretionary spending growth did tick down in March. So I think where there's a little crack, if you like.
Israel invades Lebanon.
Started responding. So they responded, of course, at different areas in northern Palestine. This is locally speaking that the war did not stop in Lebanon. The Israeli invasion and the war on Lebanon did not stop. If we talk about internationally or regionally, Iran declared, I think everybody knows this, many politicians and the Council of International Security in Lebanon, International Security in Lebanon, in Iran declared that if the strikes on Lebanon or the war on Lebanon did not stop, then Iran will not stop bombarding Israel or Palestine and the war will not stop. So Israel actually is giving reason to everyone so that the war would go back to and begin again. Israel is trying to diminish or undo the peace talks that took place and the efforts the three countries, Pakistan, Oman, and Turkey are trying to pay to stop the war. Yes.
So to what extent is domestic pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu influence Israel's action in Lebanon?
Would you say that again? I'm sorry.
So I said, do you think that domestic political pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu is influencing his actions on Lebanon?
What?
Yeah, I mean, but you have a very contradicting domestic reactions towards the war. There are, I mean, if you read the statistics, mostly it is 50-50, 60-40, 45-50. People are, some want Netanyahu to go on with the war. Some wants Netanyahu not to stop the war, but they say that the war did not give the actual results. Some say that Netanyahu announced, or the war on Iran declared the three basic goals. The first one is to get rid of the depleted uranium. The second one is to open Hormuz Strait, and the third one is to end the nuclear ability of Iran. None of these goals were actually reached by the war that was declared on Iran by America and Israel. So everybody is doubting that Netanyahu doesn't have the ability to fulfill the high goals he set on this war. And they demand results. And the other goal he set to invade Lebanon again and to start war on Lebanon again is to ensure the security of the northern settlements in
There's nothing I want to hear anyway. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Let's see what they're talking about.
So,
Bundy.
She will have to testify as former Attorney General and now private citizen Bundy. And I'm surprised the DOJ is going to force the committee to go through this because the DOJ knows the law as well. So the next step will be to serve a subpoena on private.
My kitty is very talkative. She wants me to feed her some soft food, and I don't have it anymore. I'm sorry, kitty, I ain't got no more kitty. She's used to getting one for breakfast. My poor little kitty. She's almost 11. And, meow, kitty, meow, oh, kitty, you. Oh, kitty, meow, oh, kitty, meow, oh, kitty, wants your belly rubs. Everybody watching's like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't subscribe to this channel for this bullshit. Subscribe so he could rub his cat's belly. Well, you know what? It's Friday. News is slow. I'm petting my kitty. Hi, little kitty. Because she's a sweetheart. Kitty. Oh, she could see this. She's so adorable. Oh, kitty, you. Ooh, what a pretty little kitty. Ooh, kitty, 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 kitty. Ooh. Look at that beautiful kitty. She's so sweet. All right. Enough of that. Enough of that malarkey. Just so you know, though, you're probably going to be hearing her meowing in the background. Actually, I think she's going into heat. Right. Melania. Yes. Melania made news about not being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and that's not how she was introduced to Trump, and how, she's calling on Epstein victims to testify and speak and tell their stories. Which I find pretty interesting that she would jump up into this. Meow, meow, Kitty, meow, be quiet. I'm trying to do some work over here, Kitty. Meow.
Allegations that will not be very pleasant to hear.
I want to pivot to this to get this last point in. A federal judge ruled against the Department of War, finding that its new policy to move journalists into an annex outside the Pentagon violates the First and Fifth Amendments. Now, the judge also stated that the policy is unconstitutional. And the thing is that journalists, of course, they're going to push back on this new policy. So was the judge right, or the journalist right, or was the Pentagon fully within its rights?
I think the judge was 100% correct. I'm not saying that because I'm in the media business. I'm just looking at the First Amendment. There is my friend and former colleague at Fox News, who is now the Secretary of Defense, and who unfortunately is doing everything he can to make life difficult for journalists. So taking them out of the Pentagon and putting them in another building materially interferes with their ability to gather news. And under a half dozen Supreme Court cases, under the First Amendment, journalists are the eyes and ears of the public when they are monitoring
they are.
the government.
But it's his prerogative to structure that ability the way he wants to. Is that in an effort to, influence the news? Look, man, it's no secret that liberal news is heavily biased. So I'd throw them out too. I'd make it very difficult for them. Especially at the Pentagon, which most of the info coming out of the Pentagon is going to be, sensitive and probably doesn't need to be shared with the American people. There's a lot of things that if they were to share, they would lose their strategic upper hand in whatever they're dealing with. So while I agree that, the freedom of press is a valuable thing, yes, it absolutely is. But come on, maybe if you weren't so damn biased, there wouldn't be these types of things going on. Makes me sick. People can't have to be constantly reminded of this shit. Kitty, I'm trying to do a live stream, Kitty. You're being highly rude and interruptive. Kitty, meow. 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 Meow, Kitty, meow. I love my cat. I have to give her plenty of attention because she's old. And she has been a faithful companion for 11 years. I love my kitty very much. In fact, my soon-to-be ex-wife that left me a couple of years ago, she said that she was jealous of my cat. Kitty, everybody can hear you, Kitty. You don't have to yell. Meow. Come on, Kitty, right here. Come on, how about right here? How about you Kitty right here? Kitty, you want to do the news, Kitty? What's going on in the world of kitty cats? Meow, 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 meow. Kitty, meow, meow, meow. Yep. She wants to stay over there and yell at me. She doesn't want to get in my lap.
About this, right? They're hoping for the best for themselves and their families, and they want to stay safe. Meanwhile, that's all wrapped up with the hope that this regime will be eliminated. I did another interview a little while ago where I talked about how it's difficult to sort of separate the two because they're getting hit with missiles and bombs, and they don't know what's going to happen if they step outside of their homes. But they're also worried about what their own government will do to them. And I know we saw a lot of that when the president had said that he would wipe out the end of civilization, a little bit about what the government said that they would do. I mean, they made them be human shields around a lot of these key infrastructure points that Trump said that he would hit. It's a really, really difficult time. And, the saying stuff between a rock and a hard place. I think that's how most Iranians feel.
Like, you just saw evidence of them making the... You want to think that these citizens went out there and encircled those power plants on their own? Bullshit. Lies. Complete and utter fantasy. You can bet your ass they were forced to. Yes, Kitty. Yes, me too, Kitty. I know, Kitty. Hezbollah and Iran, they suck. The Kitty's pissed off too. I mean, come on. Like, why don't they tell the rest of these stories? Makes me sick, dude. Makes me sick.
After Tehran rejected a ceasefire proposal and instead set out demands for returning to negotiations, he warned that a whole civilization will die in Iran if the country does not heed his ultimatum to accept US war demands. On April 8th, Pakistan announced a major breakthrough confirming that the United States and Iran had agreed to an immediate 2-week ceasefire. The agreement, facilitated through sustained diplomatic engagement, also included provisions for broader regional de-escalation and paved the way for formal talks in Islamabad aimed at achieving a lasting settlement. World leaders welcomed the move.
Factories and warehouses are now facing shortages, logistical issues, and record price pressures across the sector.
China's plastics hub Zhangmutu in Dongguan, Guangdong province is under strain as oil-linked costs surge due to Middle East war. Plastic pellet prices have risen sharply since March, with industry players reporting increases of up to 60%.
At the peak, after March 5th, Zhangmutu was gridlocked for nearly a week. Traffic jams stretched about 10 to 15 kilometers. Every warehouse was packed to capacity, and both inbound and outbound cargo were heavily affected.
Factories say safety stocks have been depleted, forcing them to buy raw materials at higher market prices. Costs are expected to be passed down the supply chain, increasing pressure on downstream manufacturers.
As a modified plastics factory, we usually keep some safety stock before the year end and during normal times. But our inventory has basically all been used up and shipped out. So now all of our raw materials are being bought at current market prices, which are very high. This will soon be passed on to downstream customers, and to be honest, the pressure on them is also quite heavy.
That's no secret.
Warehouses report severe congestion, with traffic jams stretching up to 15 kilometers as firms rush to secure inventory amid panic buying. Some vendors also say upstream suppliers have failed to honor lower-priced contracts. Upstream petrochemical plants facing feedstock constraints have also raised prices, adding further pressure.
From what we understand from others in the market, the main problem now lies with upstream chemical plants. In perhaps 70% to 80% of cases, they have refused to deliver on previously signed low-priced contracts, even though deposits had already been paid and delivery was due, citing force majeure. But if we sign contracts with them at higher prices, they do have goods to deliver. Personally,
when's the last time you saw prices of anything that have skyrocketed lately? When's the last time you saw any of those prices actually come down a significant amount and stay there? That's not how this works. Prices go up every single year. Sometimes more often, but you can bet your ass that it's every year at a minimum. Every major corporation does this. They continuously raise prices to anywhere from 3 to 5% ish, sometimes more, to combat inflation, which I understand. But you're never going to see prices come down to where a lot of things were, say, in the 1980s. You're never going to see a Snickers bar at 50 cents again. You know what I mean? You're never going to see a gallon of milk for 99 cents again. You're never going to see... some of those things do fluctuate. Okay, don't get me wrong. But, no. They're too greedy. They will never, ever bring prices back down to a reasonable level. Honestly... that reasonable level would be way lower, not just a little. Back when a loaf of bread was 10 cents and, you could get a handful of candy for 5 cents or, pay a quarter or two for a gallon of milk. 10 to 25 cents for a dozen eggs, right? Yeah, those days are over. We'll never see that again. It's tragic to me. It really, really hurts my feelings. That's because they've been sucking the value of our dollars out for decades.
India has received a temporary US waiver, allowing it to import Russian crude oil.
Russian crude, despite global sanctions.
The President and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors.
Thanks for joining us on this global journey.
Okay.
Next time
I get it.
with more stories from every corner of the world.
Allowing these companies to buy oil from Russia. Okay, I get it. That's because the Strait of Hormuz. We're now hitting Iran in the pocket a little bit, but you know what? Those pockets are very deep.
This is the scene behind me.
Those
You
pockets
can
are
see
extraordinarily
that this
deep.
fire is continuing
So,
to
as
burn.
nice of an
Firefighters
idea
are using.
as
This
that
is a
is,
group of people
I
that
don't
remain
know
loyal
how,
to Nicolás Maduro, such as the people that is in charge of the country.
Let me just run you through the specific 4 charges. They are narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy.
Oh, hey. Have you guys heard? Remember the beautiful young Ukrainian girl, Elira? I don't remember her name. It's a Russian-sounding name. The beautiful young blonde Ukrainian woman that was stabbed to death by that animal in Charlotte last year. You remember that? Well, did you know that dickhead? I've got much stronger words, believe me, but there's no way I could say them on YouTube if you catch my drift. This animal, this baboon, is getting off. He's been deemed unfit to stand trial. So, what that means is, in the American justice system, you can be unfit to stand trial and at the same time somehow not be unfit to run free. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I'm sorry, but I believe that piece of human garbage should be drawn and quartered. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a fun little medieval death execution method. Drawn and quartered. And then live stream it. And charge $100 to watch it. And give every dollar of that money to that girl's family. Because that whole situation just absolutely breaks my heart. I don't know about you, but it really... She was so gorgeous. She was so gorgeous. Not that has anything to do with her right to live or anything. I'm just saying. She was a gorgeous woman. And it is such a damn shame that piece of garbage is going to essentially get away with it. I hope he gets himself some urban justice. I hope somebody takes care of him. I hope it hurts too. I hope it hurts like hell.
The United States is carrying out this action.
I'm going to go grab more coffee and have a smoke. I'll be right back. Okay? I'm still in the chat. No worries.
Surrender to what? The Iranian people.
God, the way the media frames this shit. It drives me crazy, dude. It drives me so crazy. You ever seen that woman, that give him a ticket woman, who the cop was filming? Yeah, that's me over the media. God. Jesus, how unethical can you be? How much integrity can you give up to not report these things the correct way, by leaving out very pertinent information?
Landmark talks between the United States and Iran in the capital Islamabad. The talks aim to ease tensions and move towards a peace agreement after weeks of conflict. Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei says Tehran does not seek war with the United States and Israel despite ongoing tensions. And Israel and Lebanon are set to hold talks in Washington next week as diplomatic efforts intensify to secure a ceasefire along their volatile border. You are watching Asia One News. I'm Kerry Alexandra. Thank you for joining us. Iranian and US delegations are set to conduct face-to-face meetings in the hope of a lasting peace in the Middle East in Islamabad this weekend. The meeting seemed impossible at the start of the week, with Donald Trump's threatening to end civilization in Iran on one hand and Tehran's deep mistrust of Washington on the other. But as Pakistan's brokered ceasefire enters its second day, let's look at how Islamabad managed to bring the two sides to the negotiating table.
Less than an hour before Trump's deadline to bomb Iran to smithereens, Pakistan quietly brokered a deal that pulled Tehran along with the broader region from the brink of a potential apocalypse, halted US and Israeli attacks, reopened the strategic Strait of Hormuz, and paved the way for face-to-face talks in Islamabad. The breakthrough was made possible through old-fashioned shuttle diplomacy by Pakistan, conducted through encrypted messaging apps. This managed to keep Saudi Arabia, Iran and the US on side, while it quietly constructed the framework for a much-needed off-ramp. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif provided the political cover. Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar coordinated regional backing from countries such as Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Egypt. While according Islamabad-based foreign affairs commentator Field Marshal Asim Munir spearheaded the efforts by conducting direct calls with US and Iranian interlocutors. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi led communication with Pakistani intermediaries, coordinating with Iran's top security body on defense and nuclear matters. On the US side, envoy Steve Witkoff was the main negotiator, with Trump and J.D. Vance also directly involved at key moments. Talks were held through encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Signal, using a fast-moving back-channel approach instead of formal meetings. Negotiations moved from early contacts in March to a critical push on April 6th to 7th, aligning with Trump's deadline on Iran. Pakistan proposed a 2-week ceasefire as a practical compromise to allow de-escalation and prepare for talks on April 10th. Both the US and Iran agreed to the timeline, avoiding shorter durations. Praising Pakistan's role in the ceasefire, former Italian Premier Paolo Gentiloni demanded the Nobel Peace Prize for Pakistan.
For more on this, we're joined now from Islamabad by our Islamabad Bureau Chief, Anas Malik. Anas, thank you once again for joining us. Can I ask you, you're on the ground in Islamabad now, how intense are the security arrangements and what does that tell us about the sensitivity of these talks?
Right. Well, Islamabad is safe, Islamabad is secure, and Islamabad is all set to hold these talks. These talks, which were at one point of time were unthinkable, they're now scheduled to happen here in Islamabad. I'm standing at what the Media Facilitation Center.
Yeah, I have a hard time listening to this particular channel because of that rattling that's in their microphone. I mean, listen to that.
Roughly about 200 meters. When you talk about security arrangements, there are about.
If you can't hear that, maybe it's the headphone thing, but it's definitely just that channel, because like none of the other channels are doing that. Speaking of the other channels.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call.
I'll
I'll be in my office.
Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator.
Book sharing app. Profesor de Español. An inter-office dating app.
Oh, shut up. Damn commercials.
Affordability. Grocery prices are said to be on the rise, but not everything in your cart will cost more. Price data from Coupon Follow, it says that proteins and beverages are actually less expensive, but staples like eggs and potatoes are rather more expensive. Eggs and potatoes are actually cheaper. So,
bruh, I'll tell you,
talk to us about
steak is getting ridiculous.
With groceries, everyday goods that we're seeing. You said watch the Strait of Hormuz because it has a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, it sure does. God, dude, like, have you seen the price of like a ribeye lately? My God, they're on crack. You're gonna pay about $20, roughly, give or take, $20 for one ribeye steak. What? Well, they slowly raise those prices all the time, you know, so that you don't notice it so much. But before you know it, you're at $20 a steak. Like less than 10 years ago, shit was, I don't know what it was exactly, but I feel like it was at least half of that. Outrageous, man. Just outrageous. It's a crime.
Or choice. The Pakistanis raised their hands. They have, I don't know how, they have insinuated themselves with this White House. They're involved in Board of Peace and Gaza-related stuff. Now they're involved in the Iran-related issues as well. I don't understand why we can't seem to find a truly impartial country, maybe somewhere in Europe or, I don't know, on the Mediterranean or somewhere else. I don't understand why we keep going back to these frenemies of the United States. It seems like a glaring problem to me. But look, if the Pakistanis can help us get to yes here, if they have some credibility with the Islamic Republic, maybe it's worth it in the end. But I do think when this is all said and done, we really do need to start to reconsider who we work with as these brokers when we have crises in the Middle East.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, yeah. Let's see what these jerks are saying.
Yes, March 15th is the deadline, but as you know, a lot of businesses extend till the September 15th actual deadline, I'll call it. But the businesses are seeing a lot of benefits from the One Big Beautiful Bill.
I need to go have a smoke.
A lot of
I shall
provisions
return.
that were made permanent, and so that the businesses are really finding that very, very helpful because they can do long-term planning. On average, businesses are getting bigger refunds as well as individuals getting refunds. So all in all, the One Big Beautiful Bill is adding to the economy and is adding some stimulus. The question is whether or not it's enough. You know, as Mike pointed out, we're at a place where while inflation isn't growing at the same rates, it's still stuck at around 3%. And so that is impacting businesses and the labor market. We're seeing it in the labor market, right? The labor market is kind of stalled a little bit here in terms of hiring and firing. So we're seeing a lot of different things happening that businesses are having to take into account right now.
Yeah, Mike, we don't have too much time left, but I want to get to the private credit market meltdown. We're seeing that potentially occur. This has affected entrepreneurs, new businesses. Talk to us about what you're seeing. And we aren't really hearing much about that in the mainstream media either.
Well, look, you know, there are definitely some problem loans out there, but you need to understand the underwriting here is nothing like what went on during the great financial crisis. The people lending this money are some of the smartest finance people out there. It doesn't mean there won't be bad loans, there won't be defaults, but this is not a liquid market, right? If everybody showed up at their bank and demanded their entire balance, you know, the money's not there, and it's not a similar situation in the private credit market other than you can't just sell these things. It's not like a stock fund with very liquid S&P 500 stocks. So what's going on is the private credit sponsors, the fund companies, have said, hey, we're only going to allow up to 5% of the fund being withdrawn per quarter. And when you're Blue Owl and you run a fund that's specifically software as a service fund, you know, you get 40% of the people want their money back, and there's just no one to sell those loans to. These things just take time. And so there are some problems in this market, but I do not think it poses a systemic risk. And I think, you know, I know enough of these people that underwrite these loans to know that while there's some problems out there, this isn't a huge blow up. It's a problem if you want your money back right now. These things, they just don't work like that. So you might have to wait a year or two to get your money out as it trickles out. But, you know, we've seen this with other sorts of financial products, like Blackstone has a real estate fund where they had to throw up the gates, but the performance has been spectacular in light of that. But, you know, illiquid assets don't become liquid just because they're in a fund structure and trade on, so and show you a daily value. So it's a problem, but it's not systemic.
Okay.
So, Rosemary, Newsmax is real news for real people. So let's bring it back to Main Street, but also talk about credit. And on Main Street, there are a lot of small businesses. So can you talk to us about small business and getting access to credit to be able to hire, to finance their business? Are they seeing a credit crunch or an expansion?
This is all such interesting times right now for small businesses, right? You've got so many different dynamics and things going on. The cost of money still is high, and so it's harder to borrow money, and you're seeing that impact, labor markets and other areas. So, it's an interesting time. As I pointed out before, the One Big Beautiful Bill added some great provisions, particularly for small businesses, making permanent a small business deduction that has a significant impact on businesses. So it's an interesting time, but where we're at right now with inflation and other things and high interest rates, it is difficult for businesses to access that capital.
Well, it sounds like both of you are optimistic and bullish on America, and that's a good thing. Thanks so much, Mike and Rosemary.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the First Lady speaking out, calling out her critics and urging Congress to give Jeffrey Epstein victims a public hearing.
And we're going to be looking at a live picture out of Joint Base Andrews. There it is, where Vice President J.D. Vance is about to head to Pakistan for the much anticipated Iran peace talks. Stay with First Edition. We'll be right back.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
If you've been in an accident that wasn't your fault, you could be entitled to potentially significant financial compensation. So pick up that phone and call the number on your screen now. I said right now. Call now, not later now. I don't hear the phone ringing. Listen, I'd call you, but I don't have your number. I know you're watching. Yes, you. Just pick up the phone and call.
Call your favorite attorney now. He'd call you, but he doesn't have your number.
If you could help reduce the urge to go to the bathroom due to your aging prostate, if you could improve your energy levels because you're getting a better night's sleep, would you? Of course you would. And now you can, with the help of Prostate Revive, the premium dietary supplement for men whose lives, sleep, and energy levels are affected due to the concerns of an aging prostate. It was specially formulated for men by noted medical doctor, Dr. David Brownstein.
Prostate Revive is really about healthy aging. It contains a plant sterol called beta-sitosterol, combined with 15 other important ingredients. Prostate Revive's exclusive formula helps promote normal prostate function, and that means you can reduce the urge to go and finally get a good night's sleep.
Here's how you can try Prostate Revive risk-free.
Simply call or visit our website now and we'll send every new customer a risk-free 30-day trial of Prostate Revive. You discover the low shipping and handling. This is a $39.95 value, so don't delay. Call or go online today.
Welcome back. First Lady Melania Trump rocking the political world this week, coming forward to directly refute numerous rumors swirling around the Epstein saga.
Our national correspondent Alana Austin is live on Capitol Hill with the details. Good morning, Alana.
Hey, good morning, Krisha and John. And in a rare public statement of this nature, we saw First Lady Melania Trump come out strong against that rumor mill and say she did not have a personal relationship with the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein prior to his death, nor did she have a friendship with his jailed accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors.
So that was the First Lady's message as well, that she wants to see more transparency for the many victims of Maxwell and Epstein's abuse. The First Lady also seeking to set the record straight, saying that Epstein did not introduce her to President Donald Trump decades ago, and that she was not among Epstein's numerous victims. Instead, she says she was invited to social events where Epstein and Maxwell also happened to attend. Now, in light of the First Lady's call to further investigate this matter, we're hearing from congressional Democrats, including California Representative Ro Khanna. Here is his take on the First Lady's announcement there.
The First Lady is basically acknowledging that there were more men other than Epstein who raped or abused these women. And that means that the entire investigation is legitimate. She needs to call on her husband to get the remainder of the files released. She needs to call on Blanche to have investigations. And the survivors are absolutely right that the burden should not be on them.
So the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, they have been bringing in top Epstein associates, those who managed his finances for decades. It remains to be seen exactly where the committee's investigation is going to go from here, but Chairman James Comer, he has said that they are operating in a bipartisan fashion. And so we'll be tracking any new announcements as well from the committee's leadership. Reporting live on Capitol Hill, Alana Austin, Newsmax.
We'll have to leave it there, but hopefully Congress is listened to the First Lady and her call for Congress to call the victims to actually hold a hearing to get their story out. They need to be heard. Thank you so much, Alana Austin.
Absolutely. Well, Congressman Chip Roy joined Rob Schmitt on his program last night.
The two talked about everything from Red-Green Alliance, radical Islam, and communism.
Here's that conversation.
Congressman Chip Roy joins us now. You've been warning about the Red-Green Alliance. It's a topic that you've talked about, promising to look into the funding of this if you're elected Attorney General also in your state. Talk about that.
Yeah, the people who are expert on this entire subject will tell you that it's not just CARE, it's not just the Muslim Brotherhood, but there's probably upwards of 500 to 600 organizations that are running as nonprofits and NGOs, taking money from all over the world, foreign dollars, our own taxpayer dollars, and they're using that money to advance the Islamification of the United States, and in particular, my home state of Texas. We've seen the stories out of North Texas, near Dallas, Epic City, near the town of Plano, where they tried to create essentially a Sharia-compliant, Muslim-only community. These are things that we have to stand strong against. We've got to have legislation that is clear. We've got to have leadership in the Attorney General's office that is clear. And importantly, in Washington, we've got to have policies that prevents the flood of people coming into our country who are advancing this. And that's why I introduced the PAUSE Act. That's why I introduced legislation to vet people for Sharia law. That's why I introduced legislation to take away CARE's tax status. We've got to be aggressive.
Yeah, and just for a second, just talk about how twisted. I mean, when you hear the words of somebody like Hassan Piker, and then you see Ro Khanna on his podcast, and where the mind is of these young radical leftists and the way they think, the people that voted, there's Mamdani on the screen, the people that buy into this. I'm pro-trans, but I'm also Islamist, but I'm also a communist. It's like any possible ideology you can take that is anti-Western, anti-American, anti all of our ideals. They're just trying to wrap it all up into one and just create like a little anti-American bomb.
First of all, the Red-Green Alliance is not new, right? This, intersection between Marxism and Islamism, the advance of Islam across the West, is very real. And we've seen it unfold in Western Europe. And the leaders in France, the leaders in the United Kingdom, they failed. We are now losing both France and the United Kingdom. I've quipped on the floor, we should be as concerned about a nuclearized United Kingdom as we are Iran.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're already nuclearized. Here in the United States, what you see with Mamdani, where he's talking about, globalize the intifada, he's very clear about what that means. He's saying it openly. He knows what he's saying. And we've got CARE, we've got the Muslim Brotherhood, we've got organizations in Texas, we've got what's happening in Minneapolis, we've had what's happening in Dearborn. This is all on the march and moving in real time. And so I'm about to introduce legislation in the coming week or two called the Mamdani Act, which is going to be designed to be very specific about restricting people who are tied to Marxist groups and organizations, as well as the Islamist movement, from coming into our country, as well as expediting the deportation and denaturalization of people who are not allegiant to the United States, not allegiant to Western civilization, but are trying to destroy us from within.
You're damn right.
It's so important. It's so scary to see this. I mean, when we're watching this right in front of, the examples of it are just everywhere lately, and it's good to see that kind of work going into it. Congressman Chip Roy running for Attorney General, state of Texas. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob. ChipRoy.com, May 26th. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Carrie Lake with us now. Some of those sound bites from this Hassan Piker.
There's something
and then again to see Ro Khanna, to see Bernie Sanders, everybody trying to cuddle up next to this guy because he's got a following with the things he says. Terrifying.
I wouldn't be caught dead with that guy. I mean, This is the guy, remember. I mean, let's just go real basic. He had a shock collar on his dog. Anytime his dog behind him moved during his podcast, he would try to shock him back into, laying there so that he could have the look of having a...
All right, listen, man. There's something called taqiyya. I think I'm pronouncing that right. T-A-Q... I don't think you can see that. Yeah, there. Taqiyya. Taqiyya. It is a religious concept that allows Muslims to lie, deceive, or hide their beliefs if it helps to spread Islam or protect its agenda. Okay? That's enough right there. That is enough right there to not let these maniacs have a foothold in anything, anywhere, anytime. You better believe that Iran is taking full advantage of that, especially in the media. Nobody wants to talk bad about Islam. Oh no. Wouldn't want to do that, would we? I swear, man, if things don't change to that respect, this country is doomed. Absolutely doomed. See what Fox is saying.
Then head over to Air Force 2. I don't want to go away from the shot just in case we do see something happen here. We want to make sure, as we always do, to bring it to you in real time. But while this is up, I'm going to talk a little...
Yeah, J.D. Vance is headed to Pakistan. I think he better be careful.
Keir Starmer, who told broadcaster ITV in an interview that he's, quote, fed up with the fact that families across the country see their bills go up and down on energy. Businesses, bills go up and down on energy because of the actions of Putin or Trump across the world, end quote. That is, of course, a rare situation where he's offered direct criticism of the U.S. president. We don't see that happening very often. And Starmer's point was that Britain needs energy independence. But mentioning the Russian and U.S. presidents in the same breath is obviously a departure from him from what we've seen in recent times. Now, the Iran war has soured relationships between the two leaders because President Trump has lashed out over Starmer's reluctance to join in on the conflict. Let's lift up the audio once again and listen in as we expect the arrival right here of Vice President J.D. Vance.
I want to keep up the dollar. Somehow it went away. Let's go ahead and pull that over. Oh, no, it didn't. There it is. When did it? So this is just J.D. Vance arriving or leaving, headed to Pakistan. He is departing. I don't know why it's news to be watching him walk down the runway here, but perhaps he's about to speak to us. I swear, the other day when he was on camera, he really sounded like Trump was considering nuclear weapons. He really sounded like it.
Guys, good morning. Thanks for coming. Look, we're looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see. As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing.
The fuck? Why, dude? Why? Don't throw a damn commercial in right when that happens.
So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see. So I hope you guys have a safe flight. We'll certainly take some questions later on, but for now, let's get on the plane and hit the road. Thank you all.
Face to face.
Well, that was short and sweet.
All right, kind of a fake out there. It looked like he was going to take some questions from reporters, but
and
he
then
did
he said,
say
nah.
They're on a tight schedule, so once he does land over there in Pakistan...
He's like, what's up, guys? We're on a tight schedule. Bye.
Sites have reopened. Good morning to you, John.
Yeah, Krisha and John, good morning to you. And I'm standing just outside the entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which, of course, is the holiest site in Christianity. And it's a very big weekend in the Eastern Orthodox tradition. It's Easter.
Yep, I don't care. We're not here to talk about that, are we? We are here to talk about what's going on in the world. Let's see what the Asian news is saying. I'm kind of getting sick of listening to these people.
Been reporting at Asia One since the morning. The Iranian delegation was due to arrive late last night, but due to their own considerations, they have delayed their arrival. Remember, Islamabad for long has been saying that they were invited to hold these talks on Friday, the two delegations. Of course, they'll be here on that. But the talks, as announced by the White House, they were to be held on Saturday. So with that, we heard from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance as well that the Iranians, quote, the Iranians are tough negotiators and that they really hope that there will be fruitful talks. You heard though that soundbite play out as well. And I think in that context, this is very, very significant. The U.S. side is signaling that they would want to negotiate in good faith, with openness, and might as well want to strike a deal. We understand that there have been some riders as well that have been associated with these talks, particularly in the case of Lebanon, the Lebanese ceasefire, the ceasefire in Lebanon being done or being ensured as well, but which of course did not materialize. So in that context, this entire meet becomes really, really interesting, and I think in a matter of some hours is when we would be expecting the arrival of the Iranian delegation as well, alongside, followed by which the arrival of the U.S. Delegation or the U.S. Air Force crew that carries U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Carrie?
Anas, thank you for joining us. We will come back to you throughout the evening as the situation develops. Iran's new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says Tehran does not want war with the United States and Israel as tensions remain high despite the fragile ceasefire currently in place. Iran's new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says Tehran does not seek war with the United States and Israel, stressing restraint despite escalating regional tensions. He declares that Tehran will not abandon its legitimate rights under any circumstances, reaffirming commitment to national sovereignty and resistance alliances. Iranian state television broadcasted the statement as part of the ongoing efforts to project leadership continuity after the sudden transition of power after the assassination of his father. The remarks signal a dual approach of avoiding escalation while maintaining firm positions on strategic and ideological priorities.
That ideology.
You're watching Asia 1 News. We're going to take a short break now, but do stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm going to head over to Bloomberg. See what's going on with my cash. My non-existent cash, I might add.
Quarters of the U.S. CPI rise. Maybe that's something you can look through now, but how does that feed through to consumer behavior? Does that in turn impact what we're willing to spend? What's the bigger threat? Is it inflation? Is it growth?
Yeah, so gasoline, Mike, accounted for almost 3/4 of U.S. CPI, as Danny and you also mentioned. What else are you seeing in this report?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that everybody's been watching for is what happens with shelter prices, because we had been seeing a decline in house prices, but it looks like they've started to go back up again. Owner's equivalent rent up 0.3 and rent overall up 0.3 as shelter costs rise the same. So after a string of months where they were only rising 0.2%, they seem to be going up again, and that's not going to be good news for those looking for a long-term decline in core rates. So that is something to keep in mind as we go forward.
Mike, we already had data in hand from PCE of the prior month this week, which didn't exactly seem like a great starting point. What do you make of the 2 months together, not just this one in isolation? What do the trends look like?
Well, it's a little bit mountain-shaped. We went up in January, down in February, up in the month of March. And that's probably going to be the case, although we are likely to see another continued effect of the war in terms of energy in the April numbers. And then the question is, does it start to show up in things like food prices, because fertilizer has been unavailable and prices have gone way up? Does it start to show up in other areas where it just takes a while to get in there? And that's kind of the issue for overall for what we're going to be seeing going forward, is what kind of effects will the war have? And that is the job for the Fed, to try to separate that out and figure out what the underlying inflation rate is. A couple of other notes to pass on here is we see that new car prices were up only 1/10, and used car prices went down by 4/10. That's a surprise. Wholesale
Nobody
prices
has
have
any
been
money.
going up, so we had expected that to rise. Apparel prices look like they were up by a percentage point. So there's a tariff impact. Remember tariffs?
Yeah, we do. We're still waiting to hear what's going on in terms of those refunds and potentially the new levels for other countries, Mike, after the Supreme Court, of course, struck down IEEPA. Michael McKee, stay close. Thank you so much for your insight. Matt Lazzetti is joining us around the table now of Deutsche Bank. Matt, just what's your reaction for the CPI?
Yeah, I think as Mike highlighted, you want to kind of disentangle some of the stickier items from the volatile items. And I think for this print, it is important that rent and OER were stronger. That does tell you they're a little bit higher than we expected, maybe on a forward-looking basis. those things tend to be a little bit more persistent. Used car prices were actually materially weaker than I think we were anticipating. You had the decline that Mike had noted. I think over the next several months, those should be picking up, given what we see from wholesale prices. You did see airfares rose pretty strongly. Maybe that's reflecting a little bit of the rise in jet fuel prices as we look ahead. But overall, very strong headline print, core print weaker than expected, but we'll have to see over the next several months. Probably get a pickup.
But this isn't the worst case scenario, is it?
No, I think for the Fed, you can look through a particular month, particularly driven by gas prices. I think more important for the Fed would be yesterday's print, which was core PCE. That is running at 3% year over year. It's a percentage point above their own target. Now they think that 50 to 75 basis points of that is from tariffs, but the starting point is just not good when you're overlaying another energy price shock on top of that.
So you have those two in hand. The market, Anne-Marie was just pointing this out to me, that you do have markets starting to price in more bets of a cut. We're something around 20% odds we get one by the end of this year. Given what you were just saying, is this a setup where you can get cuts?
So our baseline is that we will get a cut in the back half of the year, but kind of confidence in that has waned, I think. And the story and narrative to get there, I think, has changed. So coming into the year, we thought that we would see some meaningful disinflation over the back half of the year, core PCE falling below 2.5%. And with that, the Fed being able to cut rates, potentially as you get a more dovish reaction function under a Kevin Warsh-led Fed. We're not there yet, obviously. But I think that story has changed. Inflation is now too high. I think the probability that we get enough disinflation this year where the Fed cuts on an inflation story alone is less likely. And you likely need to see some weakness in the labor market to get the Fed to cut later this year. As we saw last Friday's jobs report, we don't see that weakness. You have a labor market that looks very resilient. The unemployment rate is actually declining a little bit. Payroll gains are picking up. And so I do think the market, yes, we're pricing a little bit of a cut, but the probability is pretty low at this point.
And this is where, and Lisa's talked about this a lot, where scenario analysis becomes kind of the only thing you can do, considering how big the left tail is. We were talking to Bob McNally, wrap it in earlier, who's saying one of his scenarios, not his base case, but one scenario is where you get a huge hit to growth because of higher energy prices, and you need to start talking about recession. For you, what is the level where that can come into the picture?
Yeah, I think the way that we think about oil prices is there is this strong historical parallel between oil price shocks and recessions. I think 9 out of the 11 recessions that we had after World War II were coincided with a meaningful oil price shock. But the structure of the economy has changed materially over the past 10 years. We're now a net energy exporter, record production that we're seeing. Households still take a hit. But households are buffered given the tax cuts that we see. So the price level that we are kind of worried about would be about $150 per barrel for oil. That would eliminate the benefits that households have from the Trump tax cuts. We're not there, and obviously we've moved away from those levels over the past week.
I just want to bring in Mike McKee for another moment. I know he's been digging into the data. Mike, what else are you seeing?
Well, we've got some interesting surprises and some not so surprising news. You look at airline fares, they were up 2.7%. Of course, the airlines raising prices to keep up with the fuel problem that they have, but it's also the season where they start to raise prices going forward for summer vacations. But some areas did not rise, and that is a bit of a surprise. Medical care services were pretty much flat, down 0.2 on the month after a series of big increases. We also see motor vehicle insurance flat on the month. That had been going down. So some offsetting moves in things that actually will show up in the PCE when we get to that later in the month. But overall, kind of, as Matt said, expected in terms of inflation, and we get the usual volatility in various individual categories. The question is, how strong is underlying inflation going forward? That's the Fed's job to figure out.
Right. So there are some really negative pockets, but Mike is pointing, even Matt, to some decent improvement when it comes to inflation in some scenarios. I guess the Fed could breathe somewhat of a sigh of relief because they knew the gasoline shock was going to be there.
Yeah, you knew the gasoline shock was going to be there. You got some weakness in medical care commodities, used car prices. I think the one thing is, as you look ahead, the fact that rent and OER are stronger is important. Those are very persistent components. They're a much larger share of CPI than they are of PCE. But nonetheless, if those pick up, you build in a little bit more inflation as you look ahead. And then again,
time, of course, as I mentioned, the Artemis 2 splashdown scheduled there. It is 11 hours,
oh, yeah, they're coming back
minutes
today, aren't
and
they?
53 seconds, if you want to be precise. And I also want to pop this up
Okay,
to give you a look
23
as our
minutes, they're gonna
coverage
come
is going
down?
to start.
Oh, no. Tonight,
we're going to have coverage throughout the day.
at 6
The big
p.m.
coverage
All right.
will start at 6 p.m. Eastern time. right here on Live Now from Fox.
Well, then
Make
I'll
sure
probably
that you're
live
watching
stream
us
that as well.
as we bring you all of that up-to-the-minute coverage live. It's going to all play out here with 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time, the time of that splashdown.
That's going to be fun.
From here, do you see a world where in the next, I don't know if I'd say decade or so, but in the near future, we actually are landing people on Mars?
That is a very, very good question. I would be optimistic if I would say that would happen in a decade. Going to Mars is very difficult. It takes a lot longer than going to the moon. At its shortest trip, it would be something like 8 months one way just to get there. So really, we need to understand how human beings can live and work in deep space. So what happens over the next few years with the Artemis program is going to be a really good indicator as to whether or not we can do that on Mars. NASA's Administrator Jared Isaacman has charged the agency with doing just that and putting a lunar base on the moon. For us to be able to do that, that's going to really help us get to Mars. Not only will we learn to live and work in deep space, but we can mine the moon for fuel, right? We can pull water out of the lunar surface and turn it into hydrogen and oxygen, which can be used as fuel to get us to Mars. So whatever happens at the moon will be very indicative of whether or not we're able to get to Mars. But I will be optimistic and say, yes, we'll get there in 10 years.
That's if the aliens let us,
next year, but we know obviously.
Yeah, that'd be nice, right?
But that's optimism right there for you. And before I let you go, also wanted to ask you about how jealous you think other countries are, because we know there is a Canadian who is on board here, but you have to imagine other countries, not just folks in the U.S., are watching all of this very closely to see exactly what happens.
Yep.
Yeah, certainly. Jeremy Hansen is the Canadian astronaut who is on board. Artemis missions moving forward will take an international crew member with them. The service module that helps get the Orion capsule where it needs to go, the one that fired its engine to get it on that lunar trajectory, is made by the European Space Agency. So it is a very international collaboration when it comes to the Orion space capsule. But there is no secret that the U.S. is in a space race with China. One of the reasons why Jared Isaacman, the NASA administrator, and the Trump administration are really pushing for this lunar landing is because they are worried that China will get there first. And so you've got to imagine that China is watching this as well to see what happens with the space program here. So it's not as high stakes as the Cold War space race of the Apollo program, but there certainly are some geopolitical motivations behind this, and certainly a lot of those countries are watching this mission as well, both with excitement and a little bit of jealousy, I would think.
And we're still looking at that poll here. How likely is a U.S. moon landing in 2028? Right now, again, I'm going to say we got 2/3 of the people voting who are saying likely. That is, to me, an overwhelming majority, because even if you add together unlikely and we'll see, that's still only 34%. So a lot of folks there remaining optimistic, and a lot of eyes are going to be on this as we see that splashdown later on today, 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Before I let you go, one, anything you want to add, but also tell folks where they can find your podcast.
Sure. I think that the most exciting thing about this is the science that we're going to get back from this mission, and that is still to come. The moon is going to tell us where we came from in the solar system, and could help us understand whether or not we're alone. So we are going to get some really big questions answered because of this mission. And my podcast comes out, it's every Tuesday. It's called Are We There Yet? Get it wherever you get your podcasts. And we talk a lot about the science of Artemis, and we make sure that it's in a way that anybody can understand it. So we do it for our amateur astronauts that are out there who want to take a listen. So,
all right. Thank you so much for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it. And I'm sure the excitement is just going to continue to build as we get closer to 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you so much, Josh. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun.
I'm sure I'll have you back because we got Artemis 3 and 4. So
please, happy to do it.
And I want to pop this up on your screen once again to remind you that our coverage here of the splashdown does start officially at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Live Now from Fox. Important to know, we're going to have coverage just like this all throughout the day, and potentially having NASA join us later today. I can tell you they are just a little bit busy as they're watching all this play out. But again, the full coverage will start 6 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Live Now from Fox with that splashdown set for 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time. That is, of course, 5:07 p.m. if you are over there on the West Coast. Right here, you can see I want to take one more look at our poll. How likely is a U.S. moon landing in 2028? Scan that QR code top right-hand side of your screen, or go to livenowfox.com/connect. And about two-thirds of y'all out there say likely, and even if you add together unlikely, and we'll see that is still just 34%.
I love you guys, baby. Ooh.
We are going to head to a quick break here at 8:45 on the East Coast and 5:45 on the West Coast. You're watching.
No, we're not. I'm going to go over to see what old Asia News is talking now. See what they're saying. I like listening to the foreign news just for some perspective.
1,900 dead. Women, children and elderly people are among the casualties, while search and identification efforts are still ongoing.
I was in Hay El Selam. As soon as the plane hit this girl, she was there. We brought her to the Rasul Al Azam. They treated her, and her brother as well. He had an operation on his head. Her father was killed, and her other brother was also killed. She has one brother left. Tell me, what are we supposed to do?
You know, this is very unfortunate that, you know, kids are being killed. But the reason this happens, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The reason this happens is because these proxy armies of Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah in particular, in this case, the Houthis, what they do is they stash weapons in schools and in hospitals and neighborhoods, and they attack Israel from these locations and fire missiles at them from these locations, so that when Israel retaliates and defends itself, they can point and say, look, they're destroying our schools and destroying our hospitals. Yeah. Nobody's asking why Israel's doing this. It's unfortunate as hell that any innocent people die. But I mean, how many Jews have been killed? How many of Iran's own citizens have these maniacs killed?
Hope will lead to a lasting peace between the two countries. The talks come after Islamabad managed to deliver a breakthrough before Donald Trump's deadline to end civilization in Iran. The agreement, which came into effect on April 7th, has brought about a 2-week ceasefire. Let's take a look at the timeline of events leading up to the ceasefire and between the US and Iran, which was agreed on Wednesday.
The war began on February 28th when US and Israeli forces launched unprovoked strikes across Iran, including blasts in Tehran near the residence of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Among the deadliest incidents was an airstrike on a school in southern Iran where more than 170 people, mostly schoolgirls, were killed.
Missile threat warning. A closet shelter immediately. Shelter in place.
Iran responded with retaliatory attacks targeting Israel and the US assets in Gulf states. On March 1st, Iran confirmed that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, his family members and other top officials had been killed in Israeli-US strikes a day earlier.
Good. Good, he died like a dog.
Soon the Iran's Assembly of Experts set to appoint the new supreme leader, and on March 9th appointed the son of Ali Khamenei, Mojtaba Khamenei. However, in just 10 days of war, Israel and US had killed nearly 1,000 people in Iran, including senior officials. Tehran partially blocked the Strait of Hormuz for those it describes as Iranian enemies. According to Tehran, the US and Israel had been carpet bombing civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, oil depots, and energy infrastructure.
Yep.
The United Nations said up to 3.2 million people in Iran had been displaced since the start of the war. During the war, US forces also struck Karg Island, Iran's main oil export hub, frequently targeted Iranian nuclear facilities. US President Donald Trump repeatedly threatened escalation warning of strikes on Iran's power plants, while also delaying action, creating shifts between military pressure and diplomatic signals. Amid rising casualties and global concern, Pakistan stepped forward as a central diplomatic mediator. On March 26th, Islamabad, alongside Turkey and Egypt, played a key role in securing a temporary pause in US strikes Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq. Dar confirmed that indirect communication between Washington and Tehran was being facilitated through Pakistan, marking a significant diplomatic breakthrough. Adding that Islamabad shared Trump's 15-point proposal with Tehran, Iran also conveyed its 10-point responses through Pakistan, reinforcing its role as a key intermediary. Pakistan's diplomatic momentum continued to build, hosting high-level talks and coordinating with regional and global powers. By late March, both the United States and Iran had expressed confidence in Pakistan's role as a mediator. A broader diplomatic framework began to take shape, including a 5-point initiative jointly proposed by Pakistan and China, calling for an immediate ceasefire and structured negotiations. On April 7th, Trump threatened to entirely decimate Iran in one night after Tehran rejected a ceasefire proposal and instead set out demands for returning to negotiations. He warned that a whole civilization will die in Iran if the country does not heed his ultimatum to accept US war demands. On April 8th, Pakistan announced a major breakthrough, confirming that the United States and Iran had agreed to an immediate 2-week ceasefire. The agreement, facilitated through sustained diplomatic engagement, also included provisions for broader regional de-escalation and paved the way for formal talks in Islamabad aimed at achieving a lasting settlement. World leaders welcomed the move, as Islamabad now hosts delegations for further talks. The conflict left a heavy human and economic toll. More than 2,000 people were killed in Iran, with over 26,000 injured, while critical infrastructure, including schools and energy facilities, was.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has warned that the Iran-US ceasefire remains fragile and incomplete. He called for immediate inclusion of Lebanon in the truce framework and said there had been an understanding that Lebanon would be part of the ceasefire agreement.
The ceasefire is very fragile. I think that's obvious.
Israel is not attacking Lebanon. They're attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is not an attack on the people of Lebanon, even though they are the people who are suffering from this. But it needs to be made clear, and I see nobody making this point. Why is Israel striking Lebanon? Nobody wants to ask the why question.
From Tehran to a reported ceasefire violation. He stressed that any lasting peace arrangements must, however, include Lebanon, underscoring the broader regional dimensions of the conflict. Iran has also negotiations are going to help turn a fragile ceasefire into a lasting peace agreement. Many believe the talks reflect Pakistan's growing role in promoting regional diplomacy and stability.
I doubt it.
Pakistan plays a very important role in promoting peace internationally.
Yeah,
Tensions between Iran, Israel and the United States were very high, which also affected other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Even Pakistani residents living in the UAE and Saudi Arabia were afraid.
As the entire world is supporting this peace talk, we hope it will lead to a long-term peace and that these talks will be...
Saudi Arabia has been surprising me lately with their reasonable talking points, because the reason I say they're surprising me lately is because, you know, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, I think his name. Yeah, he's a piece of shit, straight up. But I am glad to see that they're being reasonable and they're actually on our side. They are against everybody that neighbors Iran is essentially telling them to stop, and they're essentially against their ridiculous ideological prophecy nonsense. Their attacking of Israel. The neighboring countries understand. They understand why it's happening. Who doesn't understand it is the average dingbat in America, and all over the world for that matter, that swallows the BS that the news pumps out, because the news, they don't want to report the truth. You know, it's the running narrative is that Israel is just, you know, a monster and invades everybody and all this. Now, while nobody's innocent, Israel, by and large, has only ever defended itself, while Iran has been the biggest sponsor of terror. We all know this. But what does that mean? How are they the biggest sponsor of terror? Because they pay for proxy armies in an effort to destroy Israel. It's an ongoing thing. And that is precisely why Israel is constantly attacking these pieces of human garbage. But nobody in the news wants to point that out. All they want to do is focus on Israel's doing this, Israel's doing that, with no context whatsoever. It's so... And this is what allows the average moron to run around saying, oh, Israel is so bad. You got half the story. You don't have a right to an opinion.
Few places on Earth carry the weight of global energy security like the Strait of Hormuz. To understand why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much, it helps to picture the global oil map. Iran has spent years quietly building one of the most extensive drone programs in the world. They are cheaper than fighter jets. They require fewer pilots, and they can be launched from remote areas. The drone has become one of the most defining technologies of modern warfare.
Hold on, give me some more of that.
Through fire, fear, and fading hope, the truth still burns bright. I'm Ross Cullen, reporting from Paris, and you're watching Asia One.
You're watching Asia
Hello,
One.
I'm Angela Murphy, and you're watching Global Pulse.
Am I though?
US-Israeli strikes on Iran are reverberating across the world. Iran has a new supreme leader at a moment of war and deep uncertainty.
Iran has entered a new era of leadership.
India has received a temporary US waiver, allowing it to import Russian crude oil.
Russian crude, despite global sanctions.
The President and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors.
Thanks for joining us on this global journey. Next time with more stories from every corner of the world.
I am going to put on, this is who is this? I can't see who this is. ET Now. Oh, Times Network. This is a foreign station. I'm a little unsure as to exactly what country, but I imagine by listening, we will figure that out eventually. They got Trump on here. So.
Between the eyes every single time. And you're looking here, and you're seeing, and you're looking here. You're out of there. I don't care who it is. Please.
Mark Meredith, Fox News.
I know that.
Oh, thank you.
How would I know that? Go ahead.
America's watching. No.
Good job.
Can we go back to the weekend? First off, was everyone on board with the operation, or were there people that were trying to talk you out of going through with the operation this weekend?
Not everybody was on board.
Somebody else within
No,
you?
there was military people, very professional, that preferred not doing it. These two were totally on board, which was very important. They weren't, it would have had a little difficulty. But no, there were military people that said, you just don't do this. You don't go into the heart of a very powerful military. You know, this is, hey, you have countries and countries. You have some countries where military is not their strong suit. This whole thing is militarized like nobody's ever seen before. Half the people are wearing uniforms. And we had people within the military. Usually it's not done. That's one of the reasons. You know, I was surprised. Somebody said it's the only time it's ever been done. I said, that's not possible. But it is possible.
What the hell is going on? Hello? Okay. Looks like that's a bust.
I'll keep it a secret, but it
As soon as I
was
go to look at it.
hundreds. And hundreds of these people, it's pretty good. Is he central casting? But hundreds of people went into this journey. Hundreds.
The hell is going on?
A lot of equipment. Nobody cares. Hundreds of people could have been killed. So we had people that were within the military that said this is not a wise, and I understood that, but I decided to do it.
Was there a point that that you were thinking there's too much on the line, and somebody was saying maybe we abort this now and wait? I mean, given the resource, like the general said, it seemed like there was so much on the line here. You must have been thinking this could have completely changed.
So the first one, which was in many ways as dangerous as the second, I guess it gets, because we're flying over daylight. You know, we're the best at the world at night. We have goggles that nobody. We have goggles. I've tried them. They're unbelievable. I see better with the goggles at night than I see without them during daylight. I mean, daylight today, we have a beautiful day.
We have some great night vision.
You see just as well with goggles. In many ways, it's enhanced. So we have the best in the world. So it's much safer for us to do it at night, whereas other people, no other country has that capability. They don't have that particular piece of equipment like we do. But when I was told flying and in daylight, I think we flew 7 hours over Iran, and that's a long time, over unbelievably hostile territory where they have nothing but weapons. We took out their anti-aircraft, which is great. We took out their radar, which is great. We took out a lot, but they still have, what hit this one was a handheld shoulder missile, heat-seeking missile. So it's not like, they're totally whatever. And they have probably a little luck, because you got to get lucky. But they shot it, and it got sucked in right by the engine. But these guys were out of there. They were great. Their timing was great. But no, I was told that this is a very,
from yesterday.
Dangerous mission. I understand. They didn't say it's a foolish mission. They said, we're going to be sacrificing hundreds of people. Do this. This is, you have tankers that are flying over this area so that because the flight was so long, they had to refuel. It's a very dangerous mission. I just felt it was worth it. If you would have told me that we would have been successful, gotten both, and nobody was even essentially injured, I would have said that would be impossible.
Building your app.
That's right, baby.
Thank you.
Right.
On base 44.
Well, I'll come back to you.
Okay. Given that you are now dealing, you say, with a more reasonable, less extreme leadership in Iran,
are we though?
What does that mean for the protesters, for the human rights movement in that country after this conflict? What's your
If they assume control, if we do something and they assume control, I think it's very positive, a big step. I don't think you'd see the radicalization that you have seen in the last. Look what happened. Women are being executed because they're not properly clothed.
Ridiculous.
They're not properly clothed, and they execute the women. They shoot them right on the street.
Sometimes, yeah.
No, you have a much different group of people. Now, I'm not saying we are dealing with them. Essentially, they have till 8 o'clock tomorrow night, Eastern time.
Yeah,
we are
this is
dealing
old.
with them. I think it's going well.
This is
Mr. Witkoff is here.
days old.
JD's involved in
I knew that, but
dealing. Mr. Witkoff.
I knew that. I just wanted to watch it again because, it's Trump. But I've got Foxen friends.
Hammer and then remove it from the country. Iran's nuclear chief this week said they will maintain the right to enrich uranium. And so a lot of points to work out here at the negotiating table. And the question here is whether or not the Iranians are willing to make a good faith deal.
And then, Peter, how is the White House processing the increase in oil prices, the concern people have going forward, and, of course, the inflation report today?
Dana, they are eager to change the subject to something else. Nobody here is saying that high gas prices are not a problem. They are saying that high gas prices will only be a problem for a little bit. But in terms of changing the subject, next week they're going to send the president to Arizona and Nevada. It's tax week. They want to talk about all the help that no tax on tips and no tax on overtimes has for blue-collar workers, Trump supporters or not. Something else interesting about this dynamic, though, they are sending J.D. Vance, a tale as old as time. Sometimes presidents give the hardest possible jobs to their vice presidents. We saw Biden do this with Harris when he said, you're in charge of the border. President Trump sending J.D. Vance here gives the president an opportunity, if things go great, to say, I delegated well. and if things go poorly, to say, well, maybe I'll get involved next time.
Okay, Trey, one more thing on what's happening in Lebanon, because those talks begin early next week in Washington, D.C. And from what I understand here, you've got the Israeli government and maybe the Lebanese government trying to squeeze Hezbollah in Lebanon. And part of the reason they could do that is if the Lebanese government now in power recognizes Israel. Is that a possibility now
Hell
for that
no.
region?
Doubt it.
Yeah, we've seen a huge shift in tone from the Lebanese government as a result of direct efforts by the Trump administration. The fact that during this conflict, you had the Lebanese prime minister call on Hezbollah to lay down their arms and stop firing toward Israel is something unheard of. Had we told you this 2 years ago, people would have laughed because there was such a connection and Hezbollah was deeply embedded into the Lebanese government. The reality is the president's been able to change the focus of the Middle East from eternal conflict to trying to find some mediation efforts toward a broader ceasefire deal that doesn't just affect the situation inside Gaza between Israel and Hamas and doesn't just affect the situation in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah, but a broader plan for the region that would allow things here to stabilize. And again, this is part of the reason that Operation Epic Fury began. The president was very clear. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, despite the fact that they initially came to the negotiating table and said they had enough enriched uranium for 11 nuclear bombs. And so one of the largest hurdles in the region was considered the IRGC and the threat that the regime posed. And now that that has been largely degraded in the aftermath of these U.S. and Israeli strikes, it opens up a possibility for the Middle East where you could start to see more negotiation taking place and normalization deals across the board that would bring in countries like Lebanon to try and make peace with Israel.
All right, Trey Yings, Peter Ducey, you're going to have busy days, and we thank you for your expertise.
It is 3D chess, and it's the Middle East, and Michael Allen knows it well, former NSC Senior Director. Michael, welcome to our coverage here. So we're balancing two different plates here. Now you've got the Washington talks with regard to Hezbollah and Lebanon. You've got the Pakistani talks with regard to the United States and Iran. Here's Jack Keane earlier today on that.
President Trump is not going to make a bad deal here. As much as he thinks there's a good deal coming, doesn't know for sure until it's on the table and what are the verification process. He knows these guys are liars and cheaters. Listen, nobody has negotiated more with this regime than this president. And this is the only president who's ever taken them on consequentially in terms of military operations.
So, Michael, let's start in Pakistan with regard to Iran. What do you rate as what are the chances that these talks actually can produce a lasting peace?
Well, the stakes have definitely gotten higher for Vice President Vance. I'm certain that the president has given him the charge to threaten the resumption of military force unless Iran agrees to the loose, at the very least, the loose terms we had worked out earlier in the week. We have to be clear with the Iranians that they do not have a veto over who gets through the Straits of Hormuz, and that it ought to be reestablished as a free and open international waters passageway. Anything short of that gives them control over energy and, by extension, sort of a veto, sort of a control over the world economy. That's unacceptable. We've got to get it back on track, and I can't think of anything that they'd be interested in unless it's the renewed prospect of military force, which they should want to avoid.
I mean, I think that's, to me, that's where it all comes down to. I joked yesterday, it was the straight of no moves, because the agreement, as President Trump just said in his truth, it's like, that's not the agreement we had. But if you're a dying regime because of all the things that have just happened to you, and all of a sudden you have the most important leverage you've ever had in your existence, why would you give that up?
So I really don't think they're going to give it up at the negotiating table. They may come out of this weekend with some language that will try to finesse. Maybe we'll get the Chinese and others to try and weigh in with the Iranians. But I think honestly, I think we're going to have to go back to a situation where the United States is degrading Iran's coastal defenses near the Strait of Hormuz. We've been busily degrading other things across the country the last 5 weeks. But that will enable, we think, the CENTCOM commander to say to the commander-in-chief, we've now reduced the threat enough to where we can do a freedom of navigation operation, establish that it's back open, and hopefully be able to do an escort mission to start bringing tankers through. If they're not going to let it go.
Sorry, Michael, that means we go back to war, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid so. I mean, let's see what happens this weekend. We've got I'm sure we have a very effective message. And so Vance has got a lot of pressure on him here.
Yeah.
All right. Michael Allen, thank you. We'll be in touch.
By the hour. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
If you can get a pit on him before he gets up, get him.
If you look at that, a wild police chase out of Washington State. Authorities say the suspect is a repeat offender with 19 felony convictions. We'll show you more of that dash cam video.
Also, we've got an illegal immigrant accused of attacking and killing a Florida mother with a hammer. Now President Trump blasting the critics of his immigration restrictions.
And the moment of truth for Artemis 2. The mission is set to close with a historic splashdown tonight. How the crew is preparing.
I guess the entry thing, I'll be honest and say I've actually been thinking about entry since April 3rd, 2023, when we got assigned to this mission. And one of the first press conferences we were asked, what are we looking forward to? And I said, splashdown.
You've put up with your old shower for too long. It's outdated, unsafe, and it's time to replace it. But why struggle with a lengthy shower remodel when Jacuzzi can do it in just one day? And there's no need to break a sweat or your budget.
Right now, we're waiving all installation costs, plus offering 0 interest and 0 payments for up to 1 year.
So you can finally convert your old bath to a safer, easy entry shower, complete with a custom seat, grab bars, and slip-resistant floor installed in 1 day.
My overall experience with Jacuzzi has been wonderful. Everything was customized to the way I wanted it for the price that I wanted to pay.
I've had a great experience from start to finish.
Don't take matters into your own hands. Do it the smart way. Give Jacuzzi Bath Remodel a call.
There are only weeks remaining during our limited time offer. We're waiving all installation costs and offering no interest and no payments for up to 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-538-1261.
When my mother heard about Pure Talk's latest offer, she said, Michael, that's a third of what I'm paying my current provider. How's that even possible? I said, Ma, your current provider spent $12 billion last year on advertising and promotion. Pure Talk hired me to make a few commercials on my iPhone. That's why you can get unlimited talk and text with plenty of data on a crazy fast 5G network for just $25 a month. You're welcome. Pure Talk, everything you need, nothing you don't.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your
Let's bring in Tom White, my co-host of Fast Market, to help set up the action today. All right, Tom. So it looks like investors taking a breather ahead of these high-stakes talks between the U.S. and Iran that kick off this weekend. You know, you've got Pakistan once again at the table, essentially acting as the mediator for all of this. Walk us through, how you're looking at markets today.
Well, I think it's pretty optimistic for equity markets. I mean, you mentioned the solid gains that we've seen so far this week on this optimism that we're going to get a deal done. Iran arriving in Pakistan this morning, so we'll get those talks underway. But then you start looking at maybe the divergence between what we've seen in crude oil versus what we've seen in the equity market. The equity market's got everything priced in that it's going to be all great in the next couple of weeks here. We're going to get through this conflict. But the Straits of Hormuz, nothing's going through. I believe over the last 24 hours, only one oil tanker went through at this point. So that's going to be contentious because, Iran and Oman want to start charging fees to go through the Straits of Hormuz, which would basically, in an oil tanker, wipe out all of the profits that you might have putting one of those tankers through. So there's going to be some contention there, but you can't argue with what investors are doing right now. They're getting back into equities. It's a risk-on type of trade. They're kind of ignoring maybe the inflationary risks that we're seeing from higher oil prices. We'll get that CPI reading this morning. That's expected to be up 1%, basically month over month. We're going to jump up to maybe in the mid 3% level on a year-over-year headline number. Core probably not going to be up that much because it excludes oil at this point. But yeah, I think, the optimism's there. I just don't know if it's warranted right now. I think you've got to really start looking forward in the markets. And I think that's what the investors are doing right now. They're looking forward. And then we get earnings season kicking off next week. So that'll be, probably where the rubber meets the road as far as are these earnings holding up with all these headline risks and macro risks that are out there.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about oil and where that sits. We've got, pretty range-bound action happening within oil, sitting below around $98 a barrel for WTI. So little change this morning, but still elevated when you think about things. And I wonder if that has to do with just how tenuous this agreement is. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that's going to be, what's on everybody's mind. If crude oil jumps back above $100 a barrel, if Lebanon, comes to the table with Israel, if Israel pulls back on attacks from Lebanon, there's so much minutia in, what's going to happen in crude oil. Now, the impact to the consumer here in the U.S. has gone down, right? It's below 3.7%. As part of what they, what they use for gasoline, basically on a monthly basis. So that's actually been a benefit. Maybe that's why the equity market's looking past the fact that crude oil is still $98 a barrel and still up significantly so far in 2026. But then, is this 2-week reprieve or ceasefire that we have going to come to fruition? Because you're hearing one thing, but then maybe behind closed doors or on those phone calls that they've had, you're hearing something else. So will Iran be able to save face by letting traffic go through the Straits of Hormuz at this point? Because after the ceasefire, they were still sending drones and missiles to some of their neighboring countries there in the Middle East. So this is going to be geopolitical tension. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. I talked to Carly Gardner earlier this week, and we follow her and maybe some of her charts on crude oil. She said that there's going to be an oversupply of oil when this is, done, as far as the conflict goes, if we can get through this, where, hey, we might see crude oil fall back down below, $40, $30 a barrel because of the overglut of crude oil. Now, what are these countries doing that are struggling right now? Well, it's the EU, it's Asia. It's India, it's Pakistan, it's Japan. They're struggling right now because of the fact that they can't produce their own crude and energy at this point. So there's going to be probably that built-in layer where they're going to probably reassess their stockpiles that they have of oil. They're going to start reworking deals to get energy in the future. So, everybody that thinks that crude oil is going to fall from $98 a barrel back down below $80, $70 a barrel, that might not come to fruition for months because of the demand that's going to probably be out there as these other countries rework the way that they get their energy.
It makes me think that, of course, Pakistan has a vested interest in this truce becoming something more permanent. Let's talk about the latest with CoreWeave. Those shares moving higher this morning. It seems like it's another day, another deal here.
Yeah, CoreWeave, it seems like it. And you know what? The stock needs it because they're taking on a lot of debt. I think that's one of the things that got lost in that partnership or that expansion of their partnership with Meta Platforms yesterday, that $21 billion, is the fact that they're still taking on debt. To basically supply their build out of these AI infrastructures. They announced this morning that agreement with Anthropic to support the development and deployment of Anthropic's Claude family of AI models, and Claude's been in the headlines. So look at software stocks this week based on their new model. That basically might take away a lot of the engineering jobs or contracts that a lot of these software companies have. So they've been all down double digits so far this week. But this is just continues that cycle that we've seen, Diane, over the last 6 to 8 months, where all these
It's like they jumped ship on
It'd
me.
be around 125x. That compares to NVIDIA, which is about 35x right now, Alphabet, which is around 9, Apple around 9, Meta around 7, Tesla around 14. And in fact, if you were to combine the entire Mag 7, it would be around 87. So SpaceX would be selling itself at a multiple larger than the entire Mag 7 combined.
Yep.
But is that like Tesla, where we don't know some of the future of Tesla? Tesla is going to be obviously humanoids, robotics, robo-taxis, energy. It's not just a car company. So is SpaceX like that too? Because sometimes, you know, it gets overvalued on the future.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're not just selling rockets and launch services. They're selling kind of two parts to their story. One, which is very real, which is the global communications infrastructure.
We are 8
Starlink,
minutes away
which
from the market
is a cash
opening.
cow. It generates a lot of cash for the company. And then the other piece to
We've
their
got high hopes for the
story
day.
is AI plus data centers in space, as we mentioned. And again, that's going to take investors to really have to buy into that dream and determine whether that's something that can actually happen.
You said that there has been some possibility SpaceX Tesla merger speculation. It is just that. It's not fact. How likely do you think that could actually happen?
I feel like it's inevitable. In fact, there's questions as to why wouldn't SpaceX even do a reverse merger into Tesla simply to save all the headache and the costs that going public requires. No one seems to really be talking about that right now, so I'm not expecting that. But I do think, you know, whether it's next year or in the years to come, I think eventually SpaceX and Tesla could be tied up together.
So do you think you buy Tesla now? If you think that that is maybe a chance, do you buy some Tesla shares now?
I'm not so sure. I almost think that some institutional investors will be selling Tesla
Look,
in order
man,
to make
you
room
know,
for SpaceX.
The SpaceX IPO, when it comes, I mean, first of all, they've brought SpaceX X, like the Twitter, and some other company of Elon Musk's with an X in it. Anyway, they've combined them all. There's 3 X companies that they combined into this for this IPO. So it's just damn sure going to be interesting when it finally hits. All right, we're just a few minutes away from the market bell. Looks like Bitcoin is itching to go above this 72.5 mark. Ethereum probably following suit. Yeah, Ethereum's on the climb. Wish I had some cash to throw at it, baby. Looks like crude oil came down, and it is just kind of hovering, waiting to see what happens, really. Same with Brent. Honestly, I expected it to be up by now with what's going on in with the Strait of Hormuz and all that. I mean, that's just screwing everything up, really. Let's go over to... Let's see what old Bloomberg has to say. You see, I'm not even on Bloomberg. This is old. This is this from Trump, like on Monday, I believe that was when that was. That's some foreign news. They're just capitalizing, trying to get views. Nothing important. It's just Trump's old speech. But we've got Bloomberg going on now. Let's see. I got Schwab going on. Everybody seems to be in commercial. Fox is talking about the Artemis. Newsmax has Melania Trump on camera. I really don't care. I know what she's talking about. Oh, they quickly got off of that. Alright, looks like Schwab is focused on the bell. That's good because it's almost here.
To see how much this is impacting other parts of the world as well. I mean, Chinese wholesale prices, I do want to talk about that because this is what is charged at the factory gate, actually came out of deflation for the first time in 3 years. Now, this is really interesting because for now, it hasn't spilled over into China's CPI. In fact, China's been in a bit of a different boat. It is
We're
facing
4 minutes away from the bell.
disinflation or deflationary pressures in that country. And so the CPI actually just only rose 1%. That is far below the government's target of 2%. The issue in China right now is that you don't want to see bad inflation, higher energy costs.
I'm
that are
very
going
curious
to, obviously
to
then eat
see
into the
what goes on in the tech sector, specifically because of Anthropic. You know, they're not listed on the stock exchange yet, but I fully believe that they are going to have a major impact on the AI space. So Anthropic's one to keep an eye on for sure. I would expect a bigger company, maybe like Nvidia, to perhaps gobble them up. But if the leadership at Anthropic has half a brain, they won't do that. In fact, I'm pretty sure those people are some of the most concerned about AI and the dangers that it entails, or the danger that entails. Silver running sideways, kind of creeping up a little bit. Busted through this high. That's good by a whole 30 cents. Gold doing the same. Look at these candles. Yeah, that's not manipulation. Or that might have been right when the market, some market probably opened. The Asian market opens at 8. I think, our time. That may or may not have had anything to do with it. I'm not sure. 2 minutes away from the market bell, you can see the counter right there. Keep in mind, what you're seeing is probably about 10 or 15 seconds delayed. So when that says 15 seconds, that's when the bell actually will be ringing. That's a rough estimate, because I get a delay from them of about 7 seconds, and then you get a delay from me of about 7 seconds. So it's roughly 14 seconds of a delay, which sucks. I try and put low latency on as best as I can, but you can't avoid some of the delay. It's impossible.
Around, of course, these companies and Anthropic eating their lunch. So we're trying to figure out and decipher whether the scare coming from this latest model is real now, just given how powerful it is. And I think the fact that these CEOs have ever had a meeting with Besant and Powell really speaks to some of the concern now in DC coming from the government about some of these new AI models and the impact on the financial services as well. But it's been interesting because from a cybersecurity perspective then, Nicole, you had Dan Ives over at Wedbush, coming out talking about yesterday, responding to obviously that sell-off we saw. Some of these stocks getting decimated. The Anthropic threat, he says, to Palantir, for instance, is way overblown. He said this will be a long-term winner and it will be Palantir. But he acknowledges, obviously, what we're seeing from Anthropic is something to pay attention to, but he does say that, obviously what we saw yesterday is unprecedented and doesn't believe that it really stacks up. He says it's the wrong take and a fictional narrative in his view, because Palantir is the epicenter of leaders in the AI revolution, according to him. So we're looking at cybersecurity and financial services as part of, obviously, what Anthropic is doing here with Mythos.
Yeah, and those software stocks, you sort of thought maybe it was passing, but not just yet. Thank you so much, Sam Vadas. Great to see you. We'll catch you on Morning Trade Live. Folks, stand by because this is the opening bell.
And we're off.
All right, and we are off. It's a winning week on Wall Street. I think that's first worth noting. The S&P 500 is up 3.9% this week. The S&P right now is gaining about 15 points at 6840. That is the level there. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, though, is down about 5 points here right now as you take a look at that. That's very interesting. I'll look at what's weighing on that in a moment. The NASDAQ here is up 1/3%, and the Russell is also gaining. So that's where you're seeing. I mean, of course, energy here has a down arrow, also consumer staples. Some of the names that are showing some weakness here today: ServiceNow, Palantir, Intuit, Autodesk, Palo Alto, Intel. So those are some of the names that are coming under pressure, and we're going to be covering some of those in more detail for you in just a moment. But that's what we're seeing as far as the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Listen, I mean, let's see how quickly I can navigate this on the Thinkorswim, because I'd like to know what the real laggards are here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Sherwin-Williams, Nike, Salesforce, Travelers, Walmart, Amgen. All right, there you have it. Let's take a look at some of the movers here. Diane King Hall is with us, and we talked about some of these software names coming under pressure, especially on the heels of Anthropic. And let's look at ServiceNow getting a downgrade, right? It is, yeah. I saw that red on the heat map in the services sector. We've been talking about the SaaS apocalypse. They've been getting hit once again. There is particular attention to ServiceNow today. This off the back of a downgrade by UBS. They've downgraded ServiceNow to neutral. They've lowered their price target to 100, which means there's still some potential upside from here, but in terms of their view, the view is that AI is a bigger threat than previously thought for ServiceNow, so hence the reason why they've cut their rating. UBS says that ServiceNow was once seen as well-positioned for the AI era, but that thesis is now under pressure. It's weakening as enterprise customers, they say, shift their spending toward AI infrastructure and away from traditional software. They said they've done a bunch of those channel checks and have seen a cutback on enterprise spending. It's a broader trend.
Airbnb.
Software budgets are getting squeezed. More than half of their
Royal
checks
Caribbean
with big
Cruises.
customers pointing to tighter non-AI spending. And keep in mind, shares of ServiceNow, even with today's move, they've been under pressure so far this year. This year down. You add in today's move, down more than 40% year to date. So it's been a difficult year for this company, taking them down on that year-over-year basis as well. So the software space still under pressure. ServiceNow having the idiosyncratic focus from UBS. But more analysts do also remain bullish on ServiceNow. So this is a notable outlier here. We'll see if UBS is right on this one, Nicole. Yeah, understood. I mean, when I look at ServiceNow...
All right, well, we've got a mixed bag today. Bitcoin looks like it is struggling to get above that mark. I mean, I don't expect Bitcoin to do much other than follow this trend right here. Shut up. As you can see, it kind of bounced off of that line. It's going to continue up. It's going to follow the Fibonacci, which, let me lay over that. Yeah. I shouldn't have put that mark in there. Let's go ahead and start it right here. Actually, yeah, we're going to start it right here. Bitch. No, shut up. Going to take it down. I need to get rid of this crap. Bink. Let's go ahead and start it right now. Let's see, the 382 is not quite that high. Let's go. Put it right there. Shut up. Yeah, I'm not doing this correctly. I was trying to get Fibonacci on there, but I'll do that on my own time, and I'll bring it back to you when I'm back up. I don't like doing my work like that. I don't like doing that stuff live because you're not interested in seeing that. It's a lot more of a precision thing anyway. So looks like the nano crude oil looks like it wants to come up a little bit. It's got some stuff to overcome, and we've got, what is this? Michigan Consumer Sentiment. That's today, 10 a.m. Just a little while. Brent looks like it's trying to come up too. The dollar is down, namely because of oil and everything that's going on. We don't have any clear idea of what's going on in Iran. And you can bet that 15-day ceasefire, it is a joke, for one. For two, it's been violated. For three, I don't know that we're going to do anything until then, which is stupid. I really think Trump needs to do something now, and, the hell with that 15 days, because they don't care. Yes, Israel attacked Lebanon, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. That wasn't part of the agreement, and that's fine with me. They weren't attacking Israel, or they weren't attacking Lebanon anyway. They were attacking Hezbollah. And they are not a valid sovereign nation, so it's a shame anybody had to die, of course. Any innocent people, of course. That goes without saying. But look at all the red in the finance and the health, non-durables. Most of retail trade, the only one that's up is Amazon. Producer manufacturing is up. That's good. Consumer services is down. Non-durables, energy's down or flat. Most everything, man. Most everything is most of the sectors are down as a whole, except for technology. I think that has a lot to do with this news about Anthropic, really, and AI, what direction it's going. I think that's very interesting and very much worth paying attention to. I do believe AI presents an existential threat. Whoa, what is this? Is this the story of the animal that murdered that Ukrainian girl? That gorgeous Ukrainian girl?
Welcome back to Opening Bell. It's time for our CEO Spotlight. And joining me right now, founder, chairman, and CEO of Venue, J.W. Roth. Welcome
I wanted
back
to ask for you personally, what's next? Where do you go from here after years upon years of legal challenges, so to speak?
No, that's not
right. So yeah, going through my own case is what pushed me towards wanting to advocate for due process. And I'm very interested in getting involved with organizations like the Innocence Project that focuses on protecting the integrity of the system.
Going over to Bloomberg.
If we can end here, this will be the longest winning streak in just under a year. In 11 months, we have not seen 8 days of gains. What are we seeing? It's kind of this weird dynamic that Matt and I have been talking about. The winners are semis and the losers are software stocks, two trades that have literally nothing to do with war. But is this all about hedge fund positioning? Broadcom, Amazon, Nvidia, Meta, those are at the top of the pile. Again, I mentioned how some of the semis are doing well, Applied Materials, Lam Research. You go into the loser column and you got some software stocks in there. Palo Alto, for example, ServiceNow. It is the stocks that hedge funds love to short. Palantir is down 4%. Maybe there's a bit of a cyber play going on with that scary model from Anthropic, which they refuse to release to the public. If you look at the individual sectors and how they're performing this morning, materials, consumer discretionary, and communication and info
when a company
tech
doesn't
doing
want
well.
to release their creation to the public,
is at the bottom of the pile. And if
that
Joe in the
says a
control room,
lot. That's scary. Like, wow. A company that doesn't want to release their product to the public because they say it's dangerous, you never see that. Cash is king, always, right? most of the time, these people from Silicon Valley are just greedy. You know, they don't care about the negative impact of their products. Who cares? Just get paid. It's nice to see some ethics in the industry, but it also piques my curiosity. So it could also be a clever marketing strategy. I doubt it, but it could be.
We're going to about
Yes.
a little bit later on. So we're going to focus in with one of Wall Street's top lawyers on the risks in private credit. Coming up, big bank earnings are about to kick off. Just as Scott Bessent and Jerome Powell warn CEOs of the biggest banks outside of Jamie Dimon about an AI threat that maybe he already knew about and was ahead of. We'll discuss with Goldman Sachs analyst Richard Ramsden next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
And I'm going over to
Today's
Newsmax.
paycheck could be their last unless Congress votes to end the impasse over funding. Congressional correspondent Kilmany Duhart, she's on the Hill for us this morning.
I don't care.
Kilmany?
They remove all the houses so people flee and there is no place to go back to. Then they make it, they call it a buffer zone, military zone, whatever you want. Then there is no one, and then the settlement comes. And actually, they've said it. They've said it. We want to extend. They've spoken about Greater Israel. They've spoken that the natural border of Israel is the Litani River. So it's not about security. It's about expansionism. It's very, very clear.
The United Nations has warned that Lebanon is facing a growing food security crisis as the Iran war disrupts supply routes. It pushed up food prices, straining availability across the country. The UN World Food Programme Country Director Alison Oman said, "What we're witnessing is not just a displacement crisis, it's rapidly becoming a food security crisis." She warned
I
that...
imagine so. That's terrible. It's terrible. The oldest civilizations in the world. Really makes you wonder why they can't get their shit together. That might be a harsh outlook. But I mean, come on. You're in the middle of so many other civilizations. Perhaps that sounds a bit tone deaf, but I mean, it seems like it wouldn't be hard. I mean, yes, I know war disrupts these things, and perhaps I am having a bit of a myopic view on this, but it seems strange to me that it would be so difficult under normal circumstances.
Concerns late Thursday, writing on Truth Social, quote, "There are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait.
You know they are.
They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now."
They won't.
The president went on to say, quote, "Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have." As for Iran's response, an X account for the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, wrote, quote,
"Smart teams build big. And with Framer, the sky's the limit. Publish hundreds of CMS pages in a single click. Ship websites worldwide with seamless localization and advanced hosting.
I used to pay
as to
for
when
YouTube
all
Premium,
of this is going to
so I
play
don't have
out
to deal
tomorrow.
with that,
Now,
but
one thing
can't
that we
afford
do
it.
not know for sure is exactly whether or not we're going to get a news conference or anything of that nature, but we are going to get quite a few live images that are coming in out of this area, security tight, and you can see some of the key players there on your screen. Vice President J.D. Vance, who I mentioned departed on Air Force Two, headed over in that direction. He is going to lead this delegation that will also include Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, the special envoy for peace, as well as the special envoy to the Middle East, that is, of course, Steve Witkoff. We also, on the Iran side, will see several people, including the parliament speaker and the foreign minister. Now, again, not quite clear if we're going to hear from folks there in news conferences or anything of that nature. Vice President Vance spoke very briefly with media members as he boarded onto Air Force Two earlier, essentially saying that he would do a news conference later on and take questions from members of the media.
Cool.
As of right now, he has not done that. It's not quite clear if he'll do that aboard Air Force Two, as President Trump would do
I will
what's
try
known
and
as a
stream
gaggle, answering questions there about a variety of topics from reporters. If that
If
happens,
it's not spur of the moment, if I have some sort of notice that he's going to be providing some answers to how the discussions went, then I will stream it. I think they said that they're set to have these talks on Saturday, right?
In advance, arrive there in the coming hours, possibly speaking to members of the media, but those talks all going to get underway tomorrow.
Yeah.
What I want to do is head back to the U.S., though, and bring you a news conference here. This is with Atlanta police and the FBI in Atlanta as they talked about online extremist groups. Now, they're overall discussing the threat that's posed, especially as we have this war going on. Let's take a listen here on Live Now from Fox.
There is a lot of garbage on social media from foreigners. Like a lot. Even just inconsequential stories that have nothing to do with the war and stuff. Just stories of messed up stuff. And if you dig a little deeper, you can see they're using VPNs and saying that they're from Israel. So it's very strange. It's very strange.
EN, and I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Atlanta Division. And I'm joined today by Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum and APD Sergeant Brian Hill. We are here today to discuss the increased threat of nihilistic violent extremism, or what is commonly called the 764 Violent Online Network. This is a form of violence motivated by a hatred of society and a drive to cause the collapse through indiscriminate chaos and destruction.
Just the hatred of
These groups achieve
society.
their goal by methodically targeting children and other at-risk people through online platforms commonly used by young people. Members of the 764 network manipulate, coerce victims into producing or sharing extreme gore content and child sexual abuse material. They also convince victims to self-harm or act out in violent or commit animal cruelty.
I know
Some of these predators even watch this live streamed of self-harm and other violent acts. The FBI and Atlanta police are determined to identify and stop members of these networks. The chief and sergeant are going to speak more directly about what we are seeing here in the metro Atlanta area. But before they do that, I want to discuss a little bit more about what we're seeing nationwide with the 764 network.
No, I know what that's about. That's these maniacs that, you know, they essentially blackmail people. They'll hack your phone or whatever and find some stuff that you don't want to get out there, and they'll threaten to put it out there if you don't do this and do that. And oftentimes it's really messed up stuff that they're wanting people to do. It's oftentimes young girls in school that they threaten to humiliate. Like if there's some girl who maybe took some naked pictures of herself and sent to her boyfriend. You know, some 15, 16-year-old girl decides to do something like that. It happens. Then somebody hacks her phone, gets the images, sends her the image, and threatens to expose it to her family if she doesn't, you know, I don't even want to say what they threaten them to do, but it often involves self-mutilation down there. You know, like there was one that involved a knife. Do this. Or we'll, you know, dude, it's some messed up stuff. It's some really seriously messed up stuff. None of which I want to go discussing. It is horrible, horrible, horrible. You want to learn about that? You go ahead and search it, but I'm not going to cover it because, yeah, no. I don't think YouTube would allow me to cover it anyway. There would be way too much I'd have to censor, and yeah, it hurts. It hurts to think about.
Soon the Iran's Assembly of Experts set to appoint the new supreme leader, and on March 9th appointed the son of Ali Khamenei, Mojtaba Khamenei. However, in just 10 days of war, Israel and US had killed nearly 1,000 people in Iran, including senior officials. Tehran partially blocked the Strait of Hormuz for those it describes as Iranian enemies. According to Tehran, the US and Israel had been carpet bombing civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, oil depots, and energy infrastructure. The United Nations said up to 3.2 million people in Iran had been displaced since the start of the war. During the war, US forces also struck Karg Island, Iran's main oil export hub, frequently targeted Iranian nuclear facilities. US President Donald Trump repeatedly threatened escalation warning of strikes on Iran's power plants, while also delaying action, creating shifts between military pressure and diplomatic signals. Amid rising casualties and global concern, Pakistan stepped forward as a central diplomatic mediator. On March 26th, Islamabad, alongside Turkey and Egypt, played a key role in securing a temporary pause in US strikes. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar confirmed that indirect communication between Washington and Tehran was being facilitated through Pakistan, marking a significant diplomatic breakthrough.
That was good on Pakistan.
Islamabad shared Trump's 15-point proposal with Tehran. Iran also conveyed its 10-point responses through Pakistan, reinforcing its role as a key intermediary. Pakistan's diplomatic momentum continued to build, hosting high-level talks and coordinating with regional and global powers. By late March, both the United States and Iran had expressed confidence in Pakistan's role as a mediator. A broader diplomatic framework began to take shape, including a 5-point initiative jointly proposed by Pakistan and China, calling for an immediate ceasefire and structured negotiations. On April 7th, Trump threatened to entirely decimate Iran in one night after Tehran rejected a ceasefire proposal and instead set out demands for returning to negotiations. He warned that a whole civilization will die in Iran if the country does not heed his ultimatum to accept US war demands. On April 8th, Pakistan announced a major breakthrough, confirming that the United States and Iran had agreed to an immediate 2-week ceasefire. The agreement, facilitated through sustained diplomatic engagement, also included provisions for broader regional de-escalation and paved the way for formal talks in Islamabad aimed at achieving a lasting settlement. World leaders welcomed the move, as Islamabad now hosts delegations for further talks. The conflict left a heavy human and economic toll. More than 2,000 people were killed in Iran, with over 26,000 injured, while critical infrastructure, including schools and energy facilities, was.
A little earlier, we spoke with Sahar Razavi, the director of the Iranian and Middle Eastern Studies Center and associate professor of political science at California State University.
Yeah, I know where that's going. Yeah, it's a shame that, like she said, schools and whatnot get hit. I've said it before, however, the entire reason that happens in the first place is because of the actions of these militia groups that Iran funds, because they hide their weapons in those places and attack from those places. So when anybody retaliates and hits those places back, they can point the finger and say, look, they're shooting at our schools and our hospitals. Yeah, they are. And that's what happens when you fire weapons from those locations, isn't it? Death to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and Hezbollah, and Hamas, and the Houthis, and any other group they fund. They must be exterminated. Well, guys, that's it. I don't have much else unless y'all have anything you want me to discuss. I'd really love it if you hit the like button. It would really help me out. I am probably going to be homeless here in a few days, so these live streams may end for a little while. I'm probably going to be sleeping in my car. I don't have the money for a hotel room, or I would do that, and I'm staying with a friend of mine that I am sure is getting about sick of my shit. You know, I said I'd only be here for a few weeks. I've been here going on 10 weeks, but this is all because the IRS is taking their sweet time processing my tax refund. It's in limbo. You know, it's they said it usually takes 3 weeks. It's been 10. So I'm actually getting ready to go call the IRS right now, as a matter of fact, because they said by the 10th I would know something, but nothing has changed. So yeah, I'm hoping the person I'm staying with has a little patience, but I'm not so optimistic. I really don't know what I'm going to do. So yeah, that's it. Be good to each other. The world has got too much bad stuff in it, and we've got to compromise somewhere, folks, you know. And I'm speaking towards, you know, here in the last few years how divisive everything has been, and how, you know, the duality of our politics just drives wedges between us, and it's sad because we used to be the United States, and It used to be back in the day, if somebody asked you who you voted for, it was almost insulting. And people would get mad and say none of your business. These days, it is something entirely different. People have abandoned that method of mutual respect for a big fat middle finger. And I think that is ultimately detrimental because I personally have lost some family members. I have an aunt who is textbook TDS. And it's sad and pathetic because she drinks down all the propaganda and asks for more. She is the ultimate example of a media sheep. And I hate to say that because she's an old hippie. Her heart's in the right place, but she's being deceived. And she just laps it up. She loves her TV. She couldn't live without it. I mean, I know she could, but she won't. And politics drove a wedge between us because she was one of these people who thought that, all the gays were going to be rounded up and put into camps. Yeah. And she said some absolutely horrific nonsense to me. And I couldn't just, brush it off and let her think something, some kind of nonsense. Why? Because I care about her. But she didn't interpret it that way. It's unfortunate. And I don't wish that to happen between anybody else or other people. Try and not, make these same mistakes. Who made the mistake? Me or my aunt? Probably both of us. But, ultimately, there's, just a lot of nonsense out there. And you can't really blame some people for believing it. We should be able to trust our news. But you got to go into these things with a skeptical eye. You can't just believe what you see on your television anymore. You used to be able to. Today you cannot. So I highly encourage everybody to take the news with a bit of a grain of salt and pay attention to your own biases and understand that the algorithms, we're all on our phones and our devices these days. And we have a serious problem because the algorithms that are at work, all they do is feed your biases. Because if you express interest by watching something and vibing with it, liking it, you express interest in one side of things, well, guess what? That's all you're going to see. You're not going to see the other side. That's what these algorithms encourage. And that ultimately drives a huge wedge in your mind that blocks the ability to take in other information. And I find that wildly just wrong. So, yeah, I would hope that most people would be smarter than that. I know that most aren't, and that's unfortunate. That's all I got for you today, guys. I love you. Be good to each other. Try your best to get along. Try your best to be understanding of somebody who has opposing opinions, because we're all in this together. I love you guys for being here, especially that one guy who's always here. Thank you. I appreciate your patronage. And anybody else who comes in. Take care. Peace, love, and hair grease. Love you in the mouth.